Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network and the Last American Vagabond, and we are crowdfunding to send me to San Francisco to cover the second phase of the historic fluoride trial starting January 30th through February 14th. And for those who don't know, we've been covering this trial since back in summer 2020. I was one of the only journalists covering it from the very beginning. We've been there for every revelation, including the fact that fluoride is a neurotoxin, that it does lower IQ in children. We've also seen emails that have come out showing that different departments, including the Department of Health and Human Services, have covered this information up and have kept it from the public. And we want to be there for the second phase of this trial when it starts in just a couple of weeks. Any amount of money that you can contribute to this crowdfunding campaign is going to go to covering my costs for my hotel, the flights, and the food that I eat while I'm out in San Francisco for 2 weeks. What I aim to do with this trip to San Francisco is not just produce articles like I always do for TLAV, but we'll be doing daily interviews between myself and Ryan. And really, the importance of being in person cannot be overstated. When you're there in person at a trial like this and you're listening every single day, you're going to get details that are not going to be reported anywhere in the mainstream. And especially with this fluoride trial, the mainstream isn't even talking about it. So if we want to make sure we get the full details, I would very much prefer to be in person. And in fact, while the first phase of the fluoride trial was online and it allowed us to report from anywhere in the world while listening to the court in San Francisco, this phase is now going to be exclusively in person. So I need to be there in person to get all the important details so our community and the larger world knows what's going on with fluoride. Guys, if you can give, please give any amount to our crowdfunding campaign. Thank you guys for supporting TLAV, and remember, question everything.
Welcome to the Independent Review, a weekly podcast where we bring you the latest from the world of independent journalism. Whether you're a news junkie, a curious learner, or just looking for a fresh perspective away from the corporate media, this is the show for you. So join us now as we dive into the world of independent journalism on the Independent Review.
Welcome to another episode of the Independent Review. Today we have clips from the Last American Vagabond, Derrick Broze, AM Wakeup, James Corbett, and Johnny Vedmore, and the Indie News Network. Let's look at this first clip from Lauren Fix on the new car kill switch for 2026.
The car kill switch subject has been very heated, so I have an update for you from the House floor. Republicans have helped the Democrats preserve that kill switch that is going to be in your new vehicle starting in 2026. So I recently covered what was snuck inside the $1.2 trillion, 1,100-page infrastructure bill. It's a proposal to have a lockout device to be installed in all new cars, and this is no joke. They've already passed this in the House and in the Senate, and I covered it before. You can check that out up here. But let's take a closer look at the infrastructure bill they jammed through. This is section 24220. You can write that down, 24220. I'll have links down below as well. This mandates installation of equipment to listen to in-car noises and conversations, monitor your eyes, which you're already doing, and kill switches to automatically turn off your car. Now, it states all new cars in the United States will be required to install these kill switches by 2026. We're already showing you 2025 cars on our channel, on our Car Coach Reports channel, and this is really, really scary because we're going to be seeing this coming very soon. And this section was passed allegedly to stop drunk drivers, which would make sense, but the law is very broad, and the concern is that it may lead to government abuse of privacy, especially as the government wants more and more control over your car. And you're seeing this with all these new additions, backup cameras and more time to put on your seatbelt and lots of buzzers and nannies. So the House Republicans brought it to the floor and tried to defund Section 24220. House Republicans, led by Representative Thomas Massie, failed to defund this federal kill switch mandate Tuesday night, requiring all vehicles produced by 2026 and onward to feature this technology that can automatically disable the vehicle. What it says in the bill, and I'm not making this up, in quotes, if impairment is detected. Now, this lays the groundwork for corporate and government access to monitor and interfere with your personal movements. Now, not just tracking your eyes, but listening in your car. But this is not done by a human being on the other side said, oh, you avoided a squirrel. This is done through AI. And we've talked about AI in the past and how it's integrated into your car. This technology will tell a lot about you. And don't worry, like we said last week, they'll be selling that data as well. Now back to the vote. By a vote of 229 to 201, the lower chamber rejected an amendment proposed by Kentucky Republican Representative Thomas Massie to defund the mandate embedded in the 2021 Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Now, Massie's measure received 210 no votes from Democrats and 19 Republicans, and just 2 Democrats supported the amendment, and 199 Republicans voted for the removal. 8 members did not participate in the late-night vote. Representative Massie stated on X or Twitter, in quote, during the debate last night on my amendment to defund the 2026 kill switch mandate for cars, some Democrats claimed the technology would not monitor or disable cars, even though he read the actual law on the House floor, and it does state that it will. Has anyone else actually read this bill before they passed it? No, they just vote on it. It's obvious that no one's reading these until much later. We have to pass it to see what's in it. The 2021 infrastructure law passed by Congress requires car manufacturers to include, in quote, advanced drunk and impaired driving prevention technology, close quote, as standard equipment in vehicles. The provision requires such technology to passively monitor the performance of a driver and, in quote, prevent or limit motor vehicle operation if impairment is detected. In other words, manufacturers will be required to implement a kill switch mechanism on cars that can disable the vehicle based on your performance. Now, the fact checkers say, oh, this is no big deal, and it's only for drunk driving. This is far from true. They've been making breathalyzers in cars in 31 states for ignition switch interlock devices for decades. And where it can be helpful if you're someone who gets a lot of DUIs, you'll have to blow through it in order to start your car. But that shouldn't be for everyone. The bill also has the ability, it says, car manufacturers need to somehow passively monitor the air in the car to see if you've been drinking. The problem with that is, what if you're a designated driver and you're trying to get someone home who did drink too much? There are so many ways this could go wrong, and basically, backseat driver or another nanny in your life. Massie did note that Democratic Republican Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or AOC of New York, was one of the most liberal members of the House, voted to remove the provision. That is very interesting. I truly hope this is not added to motorcycles as well. As a rider myself, this is really dangerous. And for cars, the negative impact could be deadly. Imagine avoiding a squirrel, a pothole, or anything else that might be in the road. A carcass from a tire. Who knows? And they'll think that you're out of control and that you're impaired and shut down the vehicle on a dark road with no shoulder. Hey, why not? Let's just look at all the possibilities. What if you're rushing to the hospital or you've taken a prescription drug? This is a bad situation. There are many ways to disable a car from drunk drivers. Who's making the decisions, by the way? Is it the car? Is it the government? Is it a third party? Or is it purely AI? Do the research yourself and see if your elected representative voted for or against this line item. I'll put a link for that down below. And here's one last thing to chew on. How do you appeal this conviction if your vehicle pulls over to the side of the road and you have a kill switch on? What are you gonna do? Sit on the side of the road? Car won't run? Who knows where? Stranded? This is scary. Getting stuck on the side of the road on itself is not good, but be very careful what you allow to happen. Safety or freedom. You cannot have both. I'll put the roll call down below with the description. You can call, email, and write your elected officials. This is dangerous, this is overreaching, and we need to state our case or we are going to be in a bad situation. Check out our new Car Smarts channel, where we'll be loading up some new additional information that you'll want to know about. And the link for that will be in the description, as well as in my social media, which is @LaurenFix on all platforms. If you like this video, give it a like and subscribe for more videos like this one. If you'd like to support my channel, you can buy me a cup of coffee. The link for that is down below, as well as the social media, the book, the podcast, the website. We appreciate your time. We want to hear your comments. Let's stand up and get rid of these kill switches. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Next, we have a fantastic clip from Cristian and Whitney Webb. Let's take a look.
Since you bring this up, because this actually is perfect ending point that brings a lot of this back around, is the interesting addition of the artificial intelligence killing, which is essentially what this is. You brought it up in regard to it was 972 magazine did a really important article in regard to, I think it was 7
they've been good
and
for
former
years.
IDF intelligence individuals that admitted that they were deliberately bombing civilian infrastructure, in some cases with knowingly no Hamas targets. And as one person put it, the artificial intelligence mass assassination factory, where they're hitting the called power targets. So it's a really interesting dynamic to add to this in regard to not only artificial intelligence becoming kind of the first deployed public discussion of how it's being utilized to kill civilians or anybody for that matter, and how you see this playing in as we go forward, maybe even with the cyber aspect of it. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Okay. The addition of AI to warfare is incredibly sinister. It's being bankrolled extensively in the U.S., mainly by people tied to billionaire Peter Thiel. Look at Palmer Luckey's stuff that's founded by Peter Thiel, like Anduril, for example. Also, Palantir is in this business, which I'll circle back to in a moment. So, okay, what's going on with the AI stuff in Israel and in Gaza, and why is it so bad? Well, according to the IDF's own admission, or at least people that work in the IDF, before they used the AI, they were identifying a relatively small amount of targets to assassinate in a day. And now with AI, they're identifying hundreds a day. How is AI choosing who those targets are? What did they input in there that makes those people targets? Is it that they are part of Hamas? I don't think so. Is it that they know someone, they're friends with someone who's in Hamas, their brothers in Hamas, their cousins in Hamas? They read a post Hamas made online.
Right. They once used the word Hamas, right? I mean, it gets really, I'm kind of being facetious, but the point is that
you
I
see
think
what
the
I mean,
obvious
though?
reality. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, why do you think they want to put AI in charge of the internet and the censoring and monitoring social media?
This gets to your point about whether this is real or not, right? Whether it's the illusion of artificial intelligence or whether this is simply input from humans. And I don't mean necessarily like a sentient concept.
Well, artificial intelligence is real. I'm not saying it's not real. I think the singularity they're going to fake.
Not necessarily. My point being that whether or not like the output is actually some decision, like whether or not, like you pointed out, that they're simply inputting enough metric data points that make it.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Void of purpose. Like, go ahead.
AI and a lot of the AI industry, including Israel's AI industry, the AI is not very accurate.
Right.
And we know from like facial recognition statistics, like used by the UK police, it's extremely inaccurate. Right. And then one I reported on for TLAV during the COVID era that was going to predict COVID outbreaks before they happen. It was, according to the company's not audited statistics, so probably very inflated. They said they were 70% accurate. Okay. Which means a lot of innocent people, when you apply it to murdering people, a lot of innocent people are going to die. Okay. But obviously they don't care. They don't care. And this is because AI is terrorism on steroids. The AI could suck you up if you say something wrong, and put you on the target list, or it could misunderstand something you say, or you could literally not even meet the requisites for being on the target list, and AI will put you there. This is about being terrified. That's what it's about at the end of the day. So this is like techno-terrorism, basically.
Yeah.
When you apply AI to warfare, and now they're taking humans out of the equation in several scenarios. It's already happened. It happened in Ukraine, which is, by the way, a lot of the Ukraine weapons companies doing that. There's a piece on Unlimited Hangout by Strevola Pabst about this. It's Palmer Luckey and Peter Thiel. They're Americans, and they're making it for the U.S. military. They're building a border surveillance system. It's not working for people coming in, but is it for the people coming in, or is it for people that might want to leave in the future?
Yeah, always the question to ask for the border discussion.
And Palantir is not just a weapons firm; it's a data mining firm. It profiles Americans based on all of their online and banking activity.
See,
so what happens when the same AI algorithm that's responsible for censorship on social media or profiling people becomes the same AI that decides who to murder?
Right.
That's where we're going. That's what is starting in Gaza right now.
Right.
And if you are co-signing this and being like, everyone in Gaza is a terrorist and deserves to die, it's going to come home to roost. And,
it's the censorship.
Karma
point.
sucks, dude.
Right. It's like claiming that I'm glad they got censored because they're terrible. And then it doesn't matter. I was going to make it somebody specifically name them, but then they later get censored and they go, oh, I'm being censored. It's like, well, yeah, there you go, man. It swung right back around,
Yep.
So what a great point that ultimately we end up in the situation. And even what they're saying about how they voted for Hamas, therefore it's like, God, can't you guys see what you're paving right now? Like this very dangerous slippery slope.
And AI is even more dangerous than that, because the whole point of AI, in my opinion, is to give the global elite essentially what I would call a Wizard of Oz cover.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the AI is super intelligent and so much smarter than us that we can't even question what it does. And AI can't explain itself to us.
Right. Accountability. That's the point.
There's no accountability. There's never going to be accountability with AI.
You and I have had this conversation before, and we posed this thought a while ago about, it might have been around the time when Schmidt made that statement about how, soon in the future, we're going to have to accept that they know better.
American AI national security policy. He runs it. And he's literally was named by Kissinger as his heir. So everyone's like, yay, Kissinger's dead. Well, pay attention to the guy that he passed the baton to. Eric Schmidt.
Well, so
ex-Google head running national security AI.
The point I made about Israel, specifically what they're doing with this AI system in Gaza, which is called it's called
gospel is the translation.
Habsora is the Hebrew word for the gospel. But so basically I put forward the possibility that they are going to be at some point, it's going to come back. I agree. It's going to come back to where they're going to say, like, if this ever ends up becoming to a point where it's accountable and they go, well, right here, you can prove that you didn't kill only civilians. They're going to say, well, we just followed the AI, right? And that will really
AI
happen.
knows it's so smart. It's so much smarter than that. Well, this is why I think they're going to fake the singularity, because then they'll be like, it's superior intelligence to our intelligence. It can't explain itself, and we just had to do whatever it says. And Eric Schmidt and Henry Kissinger literally said that the outcome of this is either going to be the plebs rise against and overthrow the elites, which is obviously the outcome those guys don't want. Duh. Or a new religion is made centered around AI.
Creepy.
How do you think it's going to go? Why is this thing called the gospel? I don't know. There's some weird stuff going on.
Very creepy.
Definitely go and read the Eric Schmidt Kissinger book on AI, The Age of AI and Our Human Future. It's very Orwellian. Basically, they tell you that AI is going to eventually control how you perceive reality, and that humans, by depending on AI for everything and technology for everything, by being dragged there, by being told how convenient everything is, that humans will lose the ability to perceive reality without AI.
Ugh.
And won't be able to even understand what's happening to them. AI will act upon them. And that there will be two classes, the people AI acts upon and the people that maintain and program AI. What do you think the people like Sam Altman and Eric Schmidt and all of these guys, what class are they going to be in? What class are you going to be in?
It's their language already implies
who's going to get bombed by the AI.
Exactly. Well, so back to the point is that what you just described was what we discussed before, is that, okay, so is that going to be actually a sentient AI making choices we have to listen to, or the illusion of that, where they actually are the ones pulling the strings? But even before that, though, back to the point about the gospel part of it, or the system, is right now they're already creating this kind of lack of like you said, the Wizard of Oz kind of a thing, where that you're going to begin to see this. And I promise you it's going to roll out well past the Gaza situation, where these choices will be made, and it'll give them another level of lack of accountability. Right?
Ukraine and Gaza are the start of what's to come. And people should really be paying attention.
It is.
It's even worse than that. Think about it. The 4IR stuff, the fourth industrial revolution, the move to electric vehicles. Even if you mine all of the cobalt, lithium, nickel in the world, you're only going to make enough electric vehicles for what? Like 1 billion people? How many people are on the planet? It's close to 9 billion, isn't it? Why do all these elites feel like there have to be way less people on the planet? Who do you think they're going to put in charge of deciding who gets to stay on the planet? It's going to be AI. AI is going to decide how to call the herd, guys. And that's what this stuff is. The gospel they're testing in Gaza is. That's what it is. 100%. Do you comply? Terrible. Do you believe the narratives? Are you a good sheep? Or what kind of people do they want to keep around? That's what they're deciding.
Well, I think that's an
So there's
excellent place
no
to.
transparency into this gospel algorithm and who it decides to murder and who it decides
Mhm.
to let live and whose house they decide to level and whose house they decide not to level. If I had to guess, I would say they want to leave behind only the Gazans that will comply with the new Gaza they want to build after the conflict ends. And
I
if you
quite
don't
frankly
think they're
think
going
it
to
leaves
export
none.
that same model far outside of Gaza, you are super naive. No offense.
Yeah. I think that's a good place to kind of put a pin in it. I think that it's obvious that this is unaccountable in every possible way, and it's only going to get worse unless we do something. And obviously, that just
Yeah,
drives us directly into the digital world and digital
totally.
IDs and
But
everything we're talking
how do
about.
we stop this?
Yep.
Because
How?
the same people that you explain this to and they're like, that's bad, are the same people using ChatGPT every day.
Exactly.
Stop
It keeps-
feeding this and
Right.
get off of big tech immediately. Divest from big tech as fast as you can. Or you are feeding this. And if you believe in like karma and like the law of returns and cause and effect, if you are unwilling, because for matters of convenience, to get off of the same companies creating this that are going to bring this to where you live and endanger you and your family, you know, have a think about it. There are ways to continue using technology that do not depend on Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and OpenAI, or even Elon Musk. It's time to be completely hostile to the big tech billionaires. That includes the ones that have tried to psyop you into thinking they stand for freedom.
Right.
You know,
I mean, this is the point we made to end on. And, the idea that this is, it's obvious that this is all happening in a rapid succession, that they want you to think is for your best interest, that they're going to continue to pretend that you're making choices that help the planet, when in reality it's the exact opposite, or help your society.
it's not about helping the planet. In order to create their like green future, they have to strip mine like everywhere. And that's going to pollute so much stuff, and it's not about that. It's always about like tricking people with like fake altruism or through fear. So it's either like, this faux, like, we care about the environment, we care about the little people, we just want financial inclusion, that's why we need CBDCs and digital ID and all of this stuff. They either market it that way, or this is the only way we'll stop the terrorists, you're afraid of them, and so it's either one or the other. And then if neither of those work, they want to get you hooked on the technology and dependent on them through convenience.
Yep.
And it's time to take responsibility and divest from their systems and build something new. And if we do not, we are fucked. Sorry. At least those of us that choose not to do anything will be fucked.
It's like with COVID-19 and different, or the lockdowns, and people that were like,
lockdowns were a taste.
We should challenge the groups doing it, but I love my Starbucks, so I'm going to get that anyway. No, it's time to start making choices, like we were saying in the beginning, that maybe it's detrimental to you in immediate point, but if it's something, we need to start making choices that are in the interest of the human species and not for your momentary benefit. That's where we need to go with all this.
Yeah. Well, remember, people like Klaus Schwab and all these guys in 2020 and 2021 were being like, what's going to be worse than COVID? The cyber pandemic.
Right. Telling you.
And all this kind of stuff. COVID was just a taste. And if you did not like being locked down, do something about it. You're running out of time. Sorry.
Next is a clip from Chris about a rapper being arrested over lyrics.
Anyways, I thought I'd do a quick live about this dude in Arkansas. I've talked about this multiple times. I'll talk about this again on my show tonight on freeworld.fm at 7 p.m. Central. I just wanted to do a quick video, which I did a quick video, and the fucking mic was fucked up. So I wasted 6 minutes. Anyways, when do rap lyrics become a crime? Bentonville man's arrest raises questions about free speech. It raises questions about from me about people who fight for free speech and only focus on people that'll fucking put them on their show or, tickle their balls or something. Anyways, this from the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. I had to pay $1 to unlock this, even with removepaywall.com. It didn't work. So this is the dude in question. Reese Sullivan's alter ego landed him in jail recently by rapping with lyrics police considered threatening, his attorney said. Ken Paulson, director of the Free Speech Center at Middle Tennessee State University, said it's unusual for someone to be arrested related to threats or offensive material in their music. The odd thing is, we live in a world where there's hundreds of threats directed at people every single day, and it's rare for people to be identified and prosecuted. That's what Paulson said. He's the director of of the Free Speech Center in Middle Tennessee State University. He knows what he's talking about. Sullivan, 20 of Bentonville, is free on $50,000 bond, so a $5,000 bail after his arrest November 2nd in connection with felony terroristic threatening. Now, other articles I found, which isn't many, that's about the end of the article. A couple of them will tell you that there was a threat or a tip received. FBI said, "Hey, Benton County, fucking go smash some doors, man. You guys need the training. You suck." Anyways, this one says prosecutors haven't filed a formal charge against him. His arraignment is December 11th. No, this is a couple days. Kimberly Weber, Sullivan's attorney, said she hadn't listened to the music, much like the J6 committee never watched any of the surveillance video. And Weber said she's confident the Benton County prosecuting attorney's office will look to the protections of the First Amendment before deciding what, if any, charge to file. Reese is a young, talented rapper who is, how the fuck does she know? Okay, this is his, she hasn't listened to the music. She hasn't listened to the tunes, right? She said, hadn't listened to the music. But here she is quoting, Reese is a young, talented rapper who's expressing his alter ego's speech in his music. She said, he had no ability nor intention to harm anyone. Paulson said using rap lyrics as evidence of committing a crime is highly controversial in criminal justice circles because it risks inflaming jurors for whom rap is an unfamiliar and possibly unsettling art form. The FBI's National Threat Operations Center received a tip August 21st from an anonymous person who's listened to the music containing the threats, according to a probable cause affidavit completed by Sergeant Chris Moffitt with the Bentonville Police Department. The person provided links to the uploaded music, which contained numerous threats of violence, according to the affidavit. 9 videos were analyzed, and each video's audio was in the form of rap music. The affidavit states, statements and threats within the videos include racial statements about specific groups, raping children, and bringing his gun to school and killing people of a specific ethnic group, the affidavit states. There were lyrics about shooting up his school because he was bullied, details of a plan to commit a school shooting and bombing a specific public event. There also were lyrics about killing his grandma. Come on, dude. Killing the president and bombing the Senate, according to the affidavit. Now, I seen someone did put out an article saying rapper arrested for threatening to kill Joe Biden, which I don't know which president. There's no confirmation on that. That article is much like the lawyer's statement of he's a talented rapper who was expressing his alter ego after she had said, I had never listened to the music. I have no idea what talent is. There were lyrics about shooting up his school, because he's bullied. There were also lyrics at killing his grandma. The FBI searched Sullivan's apartment and didn't find any weapons nor explosives. In an interview with police, Sullivan identified the account as his and said he uses a character or a persona to make the rap videos, according to the affidavit. Now, I know of a guy named Marshall Mathers who uses 2 rap personas. One is Eminem, and the other is Slim Shady. Slim Shady does a lot of murdering, a lot of killing. Eminem, same thing. A lot of, in fact, there's a song with D12 called Rap Game. And the second verse is Eminem's, and he talks about walking into the Oval Office and flipping everything that isn't tied down upside down and killing people and using a 6-inch blade with a switchblade to switch the switchblade to a 6 to a 16-inch blade and fucking cut everything like a samurai sensei. I didn't get that right, but pretty close. And he's talking about killing Bush and stuff. And Eminem did not get arrested for that. So he said he doesn't hate the groups identified in his music, and he hasn't sexually abused children. Sullivan said he has no intention of committing a school shooting, bombing, or killing the president. And he has no guns, explosives, or components, according to the affidavit. So Pretty hard. Several paragraphs in the affidavit were redacted. Paulson questioned whether Sullivan's music is criminal or protected by the First Amendment. It can't be a legal threat if a person threatened doesn't know about it. And which I doubt anybody knows, because nobody listens to Shitty Femme Shady. I don't know what his fucking rap name is. I don't care. I don't even give a shit what his lyrics were, right? Because I grew up on Eminem and metal music. So I could write a threat to Bob, but if Bob never heard it, it's not a crime. What if he just said it in his kitchen and no one hears? Is it a crime? That now we're getting into thought crime. Now we're getting into this is the shit people should be, screaming about, because especially in this realm, the truther community realm, because this dude doesn't have a podcast or a platform to put you on. So that makes him a fucking civilian, basically, when it comes to the truth war. And he is about to be prosecuted. Now, they haven't filed former charges, so as long as nobody talks about it, then they can fucking file whatever charges they want and throw him under the prison. As long as we keep quiet. And then after they throw him in the prison, then we'll get loud about it. Yeah, it's not uncommon for prosecutors to use rap lyrics as evidence in cases, but those situations usually involve using the lyrics as supportive evidence in other crimes, meaning motherfuckers did a crime and then rapped about it, explaining in detail what the fuck they did, thinking they were protected under free speech protections because they were doing art. That's why in some movies they change the names and locations to protect. Anyways, for example, Fulton County Superior Court Chief Judge Earl Glanville ruled prosecutors can introduce 17 sets of lyrics they have identified as long as they can show the lyrics are connected to the crimes a rapper and others are accused of committing, according to USA Today. That is in Georgia with, what's his face? Fuck, now I can't remember that rapper. That dude rapped about his gang killing people and robbing things, and they can take those lyrics and match them with killing and robbing things down to the street, I believe. He rapped about the fucking street he killed a dude on. Or he didn't actually, he Charlie Mansoned it. Other motherfuckers killed him. And then that dude just rapped about it. So for lyrics to have an evidentiary value, they would have to contain specific information or admissions matching an existing crime. Like I said, bravado and bragging about crimes and shootings shouldn't by themselves be admissible. He reiterated that in the case of threats in lyrics, a prosecutor would have to establish these are threats to harm a specific person imminently, and the person being threatened actually knew of the threat. You can't be threatened by lyrics you've never heard. Literature, films, and plays are full of imagined crimes and adventures that never actually happened. Lawbreaking described in rap lyrics deserves the same protection. Terroristic threatening. This is what what they took him in on. Apparently, they have not charged him. A person commits the offense of terroristic threatening in the first degree if, with the purpose of terrorizing another person, the person threatens to cause death or serious physical injury or substantial property damage to another person, or with the purpose of terrorizing another person, the person threatens to cause physical injury or property damage to a teacher or other school employee acting in the line of duty. Source and the Democrat Gazette. I should probably get the old Black's Law Dictionary and look up terroristic threatening. But regardless, here's some music that may be considered threatening. I mean, he multiple names in that one.
If you only knew how much I hated you for every motherfucking thing you ever put us through, then I wouldn't be standing here.
Shit, the first one was probably fucking muted. But he I mean, he threatened to kill his mom, girlfriend. There's threats of school. I mean, literally everything that this dude is being accused of. Eminem did it first. So, like, yeah, I mean, the people that are screaming about free speech this and free speech that, you know, they only want to talk about Alex Jones and Owen Schroeder and certain people that have platforms. They don't really give a shit about, like, this dude. Looks like he was crying a bit. Like, oh shit, I'm going to prison for like 15 years for rapping, being a rapper, right? It's yeah, I mean, people need to pay attention to the shit. Like, for example, I myself do metal tunes, metal music, which can be considered violent, especially if someone hasn't listened to it before. It can be considered pretty violent, such as in the case of. There's no audio on this? How the fuck is that possible? Of course. Live videos, right? Maybe this one's got it. Why is my audio off? Great, my fucking audio probably hasn't been working the entire time. That's cool. Oh, it is. So that's fucking weird that's doing a thing like that. Anyways, people need to pay attention to this shit going on. I mean, why the fuck do I have no audio? Oh, that makes sense. Anyways, yeah, I do metal music
essentially as a corporation in the limit.
and
It is the government.
like this song is on SoundCloud. So like, can I go to prison?
I mean, you can think of the government essentially as a corporation in the limit. The government is simply the biggest corporation with a monopoly on violence.
Yeah, so I mean, can I go to prison or be arrested for this shit? That's where we're at. So you better fucking pay attention to it. If you want to support my show, go to buymeacoffee.com/RantCast or Cash App, RantCast. I'll be live tonight, 7 p.m. on freeworld.fm and Rumble and here on Twitter's. We'll talk more about the First Amendment attack. And it's a war on the First Amendment, and I believe this kid here is a civilian. And looking at, you know, he definitely got 3 S's on his fucking boarding pass. And he wasn't even in D.C. So Yeah. Tune in tonight, 7 p.m., and check out AM Wake Up tomorrow morning. Until then, fucking peace out.
Here is a clip from the Indie News Network with Misty Winston, Kyle Anzalone, and Colin Radix Carter on Israel and Palestine.
Yes.
There you go. Yes.
Good. All right. So, House of Representatives just voted to pass a resolution which equates anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. Pisses me off, guys. 412 yes votes. One lone soldier out there, Thomas Massey. We'll talk about it. I think his position is still weak, but he is at least consistent on the topic of free speech. And then, what the fuck is Rashida Tlaib doing, y'all? Y'all, what is she doing? President?
This bothered me to no end. And I actually made a comment on Twitter that actually has been getting a lot of traction, that I'm confused by this from Rashida Tlaib. Although a lot of people did say, which I can agree with, she probably was threatened to do a present vote, which I could see. But at the same time, I'm also kind of like, you're a constituent, you represent one of the biggest Arab communities in the country. And the fact
she
that
is Palestinian, Colin.
Right. Right. I mean, just on a basic level, you're a Palestinian.
Yeah.
And then, so it just kind of shows. I'm just really frustrated because for people who I've been hearing online basically saying we have to vote for Biden because we're going to lose our democracy. This is not it. And just notice how, and I don't want to hear the squad saying, oh, I want a ceasefire. We demand a ceasefire. And then you're making a yes vote on this. Like, I don't want to hear it. So it's, and even so, Rashida, if like, we don't know, but if you were threatened,
I don't care.
Say something. You know, who threatened
I don't care, Colin. I don't care that several people have come at me on Twitter with that. Well, they were probably, I don't care that it's not an excuse for your cowardice.
Right.
It's just not. I'm not willing to accept that. I mean, people try to use that same excuse with AOC and the Iron Dome. I don't give a fuck if you were threatened. This is bigger than you and whatever political ambitions you have or whatever. I mean, this is literal genocide. And if you can't speak up against it now,
well,
good are you?
It's been, we've been seeing this for the last few years with the squad, that they will say the right stuff when they need to, but when they really need to show some courage, they back out. So obviously, you know, this is on par for the course for them, but they haven't had the experience where they really had to step up to the plate and show that power that they had. So I didn't expect, I don't know why I was surprised, you know.
I was not.
But at the same time, it's still kind of disappointing to hear, like, you know, again, it's the idea of like, I've called for a ceasefire and you've been making that call, at least publicly, but then to kind of go against that and make this yes vote but I think ultimately this kind of shows, and I talked about this with Reef last week, and it really kind of hit me, like how powerful the Israeli lobby is and how, and they're all organized as hell. Like they've been at this really for the past 100 years. So like they're extremely organized and they're extremely rich and they're extremely powerful, and they run Congress, and it's very evident they fucking run Congress. So how can you call what we have a democracy when we have probably one of the big, if not the biggest lobby in this country and in the world, having our politicians this corrupted that they'll do this resolution? And so it's, I don't know. It's just really,
Kyle, what did you think about Thomas Massey?
So yeah, good on Massey for casting the vote he cast. I know some of his statements aren't as strong as we would like them to be on this issue. I guess I do give him a little bit of a break because he's constantly labeled the anti-Semite of the week and ridiculous things like that by these pro-Israeli lobbying groups. And so to moderate his position a little bit, to maybe take off some of the heat from the anti-Semitism charges. I get it. I don't like it. I understand it's kind of a result of American politics. And look, I think, on the question of Tlaib and members of the squad voting here, it kind of shows why what we're doing here is so important, right? Because if you have Tlaib in the squad voting no on this along with Massey, then they kind of protect each other, right? If Massey is voting no on this, then, you can't look at these, women of color and say, all of you are terrorists. Well, they could point to and say, like, no, why did Thomas Massey vote for it? Maybe because this is a principled or pro free speech stance, where, Massey could have kind of that same coverage from the woke attacks. Although I know it doesn't work as well with Israel and the anti-Semitism charges like it would if it was a different kind of ism attack. But you kind of do get that protection when you have these like broad coalitions willing to stand together on these issues. And so, it's disappointing that it's 412 to 1.
Yeah.
But also, doesn't that show the importance of them having a consensus and how afraid they are of these kind of coalitions, that they worked so hard to make sure Tlaib or Omar or Bush or AOC didn't vote along with Massey here and give that edge to them, and so, because it doesn't matter, right? It was going to pass. If it was 411 to 2, it doesn't in any way impact the vote and if this law ends up passing or not. What it impacts is the conversation around the law, and having people on both sides voting for it means you can't fling the kind of really low quality attacks against them that you usually see. And so, disappointing, but not particularly surprised, I guess. And I do feel bad, particularly for Tlaib, because she is a Palestinian woman who, if she votes, probably her conscience here, she's gonna be called a terrorist, and that's
being called a
really
terrorist
awful.
I
know.
She's
I'm just
called a
saying,
terrorist
like, I have a little bit of sympathy, but
I
at the
get
same
it.
time, you're a congresswoman, no matter what has happened prior in your life, you are one of the most powerful people in the country now, and so you do have to stand up on it.
Right. But I would say again, and Missy, you said this, like, if the squad has actually been doing the work and making these moves as far as pushing against Congress all this time, this wouldn't be an issue. But the fact that they manipulate every single time when we have pushed them, like force to vote and like all these other things, they've just kind of gone chicken shit and run the other way. And so now it's kind of like, again, it's not surprising, but we did not put you in Congress to vote alongside your colleagues. We put you in Congress to vote to make that challenge against Congress.
Yeah. Okay. Hold on. We need to remember, because this pisses me off every single time. The whole point behind the squad, the entire reason that they were put into Congress, was to challenge the Democratic Party establishment, not Republicans. That was the whole point. That was their whole shtick, right? They were coming out of the Bernie campaign. We all got screwed over. Everybody was pissed off about it. The Democratic Party was obviously corrupt. WikiLeaks exposed that, laid it bare for everyone to see. And the squad was meant to go into Congress and challenge the Democratic Party. We're going to make the Democratic Party a party of the people again, right? That's their whole thing. We're going to reform the Democratic Party. How's that going? It's not. The Democratic Party is worse than it's ever been. And they have not done a single thing, not a single thing, to stand up to the Democratic Party establishment. And in fact, they, as Colin just said, they capitulate at every turn. So I understand the sympathy that people might feel for Rashida Tlaib. It's obviously very difficult to have the courage of your convictions when you're under that amount of pressure. But again, it's genocide. If you don't have the balls to speak up against genocide, then you are useless. There's absolutely no use for you whatsoever. And especially, it's just weird to me that of all people, Rashida Tlaib cannot speak out against the genocide of her own people on a vote like this. And it's not even just about the fact that Israel is committing a genocide. It's also a free speech issue. This is conflating criticism of a government with hate speech, which is absurd on every level. And so that obviously that aspect troubles me. And with Thomas Massey, he said, I agree with the title, reaffirming the state of Israel's right to exist. I'm going to say it. Israel doesn't have a right to exist, period. Period. Come for me. I don't care. And any right they may have had to exist on some level at any point in history, they have completely given it away. That's done. It's done. If you cannot conduct yourself in a manner that is compatible with humanity, and you can't manage to exist without committing a genocide, you forfeit your right to exist, in my opinion. So people will come for me for that. I don't care. They don't have a right to exist, period. And then he continues, and much of the language, but I'm voting no on the resolution because it equates anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is deplorable. Yes, everybody agrees. But expanding it to include criticism of Israel is not helpful. And I agree with him there. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm just more worried because this is a resolution, so this is basically symbolic.
Yeah.
It really doesn't mean, well,
but it does.
It doesn't mean a whole lot, but I'm just kind of wondering what can this lead to moving forward in terms of, basically everyone's voting for this. We know how powerful AIPAC is. Like, what is the potential moving forward, especially like if this war continues into 2024 and beyond, what are the implications for? So I think we're kind of heading in a slippery slope here. And obviously Talib has been censured. So I'm just more concerned about what this means for the rest of us. Like, screw Congress, like, they'll be fine. But like, what about the rest of us on the ground, especially given protests, especially given basically the state of how angst people are right now? Like, what does that mean for us ultimately in light of this resolution moving forward?
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the paths this really leads down, and I think the equating anti-Semitism with anti-Israel sentiment is one of the definitions of like the Holocaust Museum that they've really been trying to push in the US and codify that into law. And it has been in some states when it comes to like the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. And what they have are the anti-BDS laws. I mean, as bad as some of the Democrats are, Ron DeSantis actually went to Israel to sign a law that restricted the rights of the Florida citizens to speak out and boycott the state of Israel. It's just insane how far they've gone on some of these issues. And so, when Congress passes this, it gives more cover for more laws like that, even if they typically end up enforced at the state level. And I mean, those laws are a big deal, especially if they start to, identify protesters or things like that and say that, this person has this kind of contract with the state government, so now their business loses it. Any kind of state employees, even the garbage collectors in a lot of places, police, firemen, teachers, all, I know in Texas there was a speech pathologist that worked for a school, and she lost her job over her they essentially tried to force her to sign a loyalty pledge to the state of Israel, saying that you have to support the state of Israel if you want to be a speech pathologist at public schools in Texas. And so that's like the level of thought control they're going for here. It's really dangerous. And because not everybody could be as fortunate as I am, where I am able to do this for a living. So I do feel like I can speak out, because they can take away my main source of income, because that comes from antiwar.com, and antiwar.com isn't going to fire me for saying that Israel's committing an ethnic cleansing campaign in Gaza if it's the truth. So
100%. And I've had people contact TNT trying to get me fired.
Right.
I'm not joking.
I will say that's something, and I've said this online, that I'm actually worried about, because and again, I'm will preface saying I have no issues with Judaism at all as a religion. I have an issue with Zionism, and I call that out all the time. And I am worried because Zionism and Judaism are more interchangeable. Like, if I continue calling out Zionism, that would affect my job. Like, that's why I am actually high key kind of concerned about. I don't want to lose my job on account of what I deem as truth. And then, especially given the children that I serve, I have served Arab/Palestinian children in the past. And I'm thinking about, like, look, obviously, like, I care about my Jewish students, but I also have to care for my Arab students too. So what does that say that we can't have a conversation in terms of we're not. This is such. It's not, to me, not that complicated. People make it more complicated than it needs to be, but it's messy. But like, if we're not going to be willing to have those honest conversations as to why people have an issue with Zionism versus the religion, and being able to separate the two, that's when we're going to have a problem. And
well, that's why I think, honestly, and I've had people get mad at me for saying this. I'm used to that. That's fine. But in my opinion, the single most powerful voice right now is the anti-Zionist Jewish voice. And I'm not saying that to diminish the voice of Palestinians. Very clearly, they can and have been standing up for themselves for decades. But in my opinion, in the fight against Zionism, which is what this really is, what it boils down to, is the anti-Zionist Jewish voice. And we have Jewish Voices for Peace out there, Norman Finkelstein, Max Blumenthal, Alexander Rubinstein. There's a whole host of people out there, millions of Jewish people around the world who are anti-Zionist for good reason. But what they've tried to do, as what you just spoke to, Colin, is that they've tried to equate the two. And Zionism is not Judaism. Zionism is a political ideology. Judaism is a thousands-year-old religion. They are not the same thing. And in fact, Zionism was created by people who weren't particularly Jewish.
No, they were atheists.
Yeah. I mean, Netanyahu is not particularly religious. He's not. I mean, it's just a reality. And it really, what it boils down to is just power, control, resources, all of that stuff. And that's what it always is, right? It's never about what they claim it is. It's never about, in Ukraine, it was never about sovereignty or humanity or democracy. And it's not in Israel either. It's always about power, control, money, and resources. So I just think that we have to refuse to let that equation be made. Like, you cannot, that's why I push so hard against it. And that's why I will very forcibly speak to the fact that Zionism is not Judaism. It's disgusting to me that they try to equate those two things, because I am myself an atheist. But I have no issue with any religion. I mean, as long as you don't try to influence my life with your religion, we have no issues. You know what I mean? I don't care. Do your thing. And in fact, I will fight to the death for your right to practice your religion. But Zionism is not a religion. It's a political ideology. And I refuse. I refuse. I will die on that hill every day of the week, all day long. Okay. So we mentioned that DeSantis went to Israel to visit. Elon Musk also went recently, and I wanted to get your guys' take on that, because as we're talking about the conflation of Zionism and anti-Semitism, Elon Musk has now tweeted out that he's going to start censoring people for certain words and phrases. From the river to the sea was one. What was the other one? Oh, decolonization.
Oh, God.
Okay.
I mean, what? So Mr. Free Speech is at it again. What do you guys think? What do you think, Kyle?
So you obviously not surprised. And Misty, I believe the week that Musk was either buying or bought Twitter, I was on your show, and I had written an article that week about how SpaceX had just signed some kind of contract with the Department of Defense. And so, this guy was always a government contractor. And so he's going to do what the US government really wants and needs him to do at the end of the day. I mean, look, maybe he is a little bit more of an independent mind than some of the people in our society. I mean, he is, like, I guess, compare him to Bill Gates, then yeah, maybe you do get a little bit more diversity of thought. But in reality, I mean, he's a Pentagon contractor and behaves as such. No surprise that he ends up going to Israel and taking these steps. And Missy, it's just amazing, right? Where you have the Israel slogans: Hamas is using human shields, Israel has a right to defend itself, Hamas is a terrorist group. And you can say all those things, even though they really just mean Israel gets to kill as many Palestinian children as they want. That's all it means to say Israel has a right to defend themselves. Is that anybody saying that on October 7th was either stupid or just wanted to give Israel cover, right? Because I knew that saying Israel has a right to defend itself means Israel's going to carry out a massive bombing campaign in Gaza and kill thousands of children, which is exactly what's happened. I mean, as bad as it's been, I didn't think it was going to kill more civilians than the war of Ukraine in 2 years in the first 2 months. Yeah. I mean, the bombing campaign has been horrific, and people should be shot. And some people have been shot and kind of awakened on the issue. But, this is just the kind of censorship and narrative control they want, where, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. It's a chant, right?
Mhm.
It's not a well-articulated policy. Like, so, some people pretend like that's the entirety of the Palestinian policy. Well, what do you think it means from the river to the sea? Well, it's a chant, all right? It's what you say when you're standing around outside. It's not actually, we want to cleanse that region of all the Israelis. That's not what they're saying. That's just what you infer from a bunch of people chanting because you're stupid. So it's just making sure one half of the narrative is censored and the other people can say whatever they want. And, it gives people the impression that there's something really wrong with Hamas and that, they're somehow uniquely bad on this side. And look, Hamas and some of the people in Palestine, particularly some of the people in Gaza, have said some atrocious things about Israelis.
Mhm.
But the Israelis and particularly the Israeli government say atrocious things about Palestinians all the time. They have talked about nuking Gaza, burning Gaza to the ground. The finance minister just said 2 million people living in the West Bank are Nazis.
Here's
The
a whole ass
rhetoric's
thread.
insane.
Here's a whole ass thread.
And as we talked about earlier this week, Misty, Israelis go and sit on lawn chairs like Americans on the 4th of July and watch bombing campaigns of Gaza and celebrate and whoop like it's, the greatest Israeli celebration ever. And so, yeah, sure, there's a lot of hatred on each side here, and that is awful. And, those kind of sayings shouldn't be like amplified or something like that. But to only censor one side of it is just narrative control.
100%. And Kyle's absolutely right. If you don't believe him, go look up the city of Sderot. I think it's called Sderot. I think I'm probably mispronouncing and I apologize. Actually, I don't. But they literally, I think it was in 2014, a bunch of Israelis took their lawn chairs out to this hill overlooking Gaza and plopped down like they were at a fireworks display to watch Gaza get bombed. That's what we're dealing with. You know what I'm saying? And of course there's hatred on both sides. That's not surprising. I think that I'm obviously a little bit more sympathetic to Palestinian hatred of Israelis because, that's the occupying force. That's reality. I mean, the whole Israel has a right to defend itself. No, they don't. Palestine has a right to defend itself. Israel is the occupying force here. This is just reality. There's nothing anti-Semitic about facts. That's facts. And so it's very frustrating to me that, and you're right. I mean, listen, I have this thread pulled up here that I made. It's unbelievably long. And it is a literal shit ton of Israeli officials and their various proxies calling for genocide or ethnic cleansing. It is a long ass thread. This is fine, but from the river to the sea is not okay.
Next is a clip from Derrick Broze.
Get into stingrays, automatic license plate readers, facial recognition. Are you guys familiar with automatic license plate readers? ALPRs. It's basically, if you're driving anywhere and there's a toll and there's that flash real quick, those are becoming really, ubiquitous everywhere, but they didn't used to be. And they're doing a lot more in many cases than just taking your picture of your license plate for tolls. In short, what we are witnessing, or we are kind of in the middle of, is the creation of a surveillance state, not only here in the United States, but the majority of the world. And we'll get more into that. But that's what this is really about. And you can kind of see the bottom right screen there. We also included the echoes and the dots and the smart homes and smart TVs, because in many ways, we're also volunteering ourselves to this thing. There's kind of a difference between the 1984 George Orwell or, let's say communist regimes, fascist regimes throughout history, where they had secret police and people snitching on each other. There's still some of that. It's evolved a little bit, as we saw during COVID-19. But we're also now at the point where George Orwell talked about the telescreen. It was always on the wall and you never knew if it was listening. Now everybody's throwing those in their cart at Target right now to get this Samsung TV, which we know because of WikiLeaks and others, the CIA and other agencies can absolutely remotely hack those. When you turn them off, they have fake off switches, so it can appear to be off, but they can still turn it back on, microphones and everything, right? And of course, the more of these devices grow with the Amazon Echoes, the Alexas, and then now, of course, bringing in AI with it. You've got anybody heard of Humane AI? They got this new AI pen. It's just dropped a month ago. My point is, we're not just facing the police with some stingray thing or the government tapping your phone. It's way beyond that at this point. And again, a lot of it is of our own making and of our own doing. And if you want to know more about particularly how 5G relates to that, I do encourage you to check out my documentary, The 5G Trojan Horse. All of my documentaries can be found at theconsciousresistance.com. And as with every piece of work I've done, the transcript with every single source, every link to everything that I'm referencing is there. You don't have to trust me. You don't have to go on my word. That's not how I operate. So you can find the data yourself. Now, I mentioned earlier the terms the Internet of Things and the Internet of Bio-Nano Things. Let's talk about that for a moment. So the Internet of Things is, even that is kind of like, who's familiar with that term or heard it by now? Everybody should have at least heard it in passing. And it's funny is because it hasn't become a normalized term yet, but it's kind of already going out of vogue because new things like the Internet of Bodies, the Internet of Humans are coming in. So the Internet of Things is the smart TV, the smart watch, the smart fridge, the smart toaster, the smart vehicle, all interacting and interconnecting, right? In order for this future, what many companies and I'm sure some folks here at MIT and others are promoting is a world where everything is interconnected. And we are told this will be some sort of utopia. It's going to be good for the environment because, well, we're going to have sensors in the streets and sensors in the light that can immediately detect the right traffic flow patterns to reduce traffic and reduce emissions, all these different things, and some of which may very well be true. And at the same time, the trade-off would be by creating a world with sensors everywhere, not only are we exposing ourselves to levels of EMF radiation that humanity has never seen, which I think is something to think about, but it will be the loss of privacy. Like I mentioned earlier, each of these devices, they come with a sensor, they come with microphones. So it's not just, like, for example, I noticed you guys have digital billboards in town, like kind of giving information. I see them at the airport too. We just started to get those in Houston. Houston was announced to be the world's first 5G smart city in 2018. That's kind of how I started to get into this. I started to investigate it. I found that the current mayor was deeply tied to the big wireless industry. He received the 5G Wireless Champion Award, which is there's a thing, by the CTIA, which is the Cellular Telephone Internet Association. It's basically a lobby for big wireless. And this man received this award for removing all regulations and restrictions to turn Houston into a 5G smart city. Now we're 5 years into that now, so they have driverless vehicles. They announced 2 months ago, and then within a week they announced they were shutting them down because they caused traffic and it hit people already. So it's not like the systems work perfectly yet, but we can see the direction they're going in. They've got these digital billboards, these kiosks that offer all sorts of helpful information. They'll tell you when to get your COVID booster. They'll tell you which side of the war you should believe in. This kind of stuff's already there. But they also have 3 cameras on each side. And I'm the only one in the city asking any questions. I've done reports about this. I've looked into the company's terms of service. They say they are recording. They promise they're not using facial recognition technology. They promise they get rid of the data in 2 weeks and do something with it. But how many people are even paying attention, whether they're keeping up with that or not? Apparently, I'm one of the few asking those questions. So we have so much to kind of, I guess, contend with in terms of privacy. So all that digital infrastructure I just mentioned, though, is what we could call the Internet of Things, right? For this world to work, you need 5G and 6G. We're not going to spend too much time explaining what that is, but 5G is just the 5th generation of cellular technology, starting with the first generation in the early 1990s. 6G is what they're already working on and beyond. The main thing I will say about that is in order for these things to operate the way that they want, this futuristic world that'll be great for the environment and great for the humans, you have to have small cell sites installed every 200 to 500 feet. So this is why on all the different poles you're seeing, you're starting to see, they might take an existing light pole and they just add like a little antenna to it. Sometimes it's like just like a solid little antenna on the top of pre-existing stuff. Sometimes it's a whole new pole. And the point is, they have to have those sensors every 200 to 500 feet in order for the smart cars to work, to read, where they're going. In order for all the other smart tech that they envision, driverless cars, robot assistants. I mean, these are not my words. These are the words of many, many people. And again, I love technology. I love the sci-fi world. And if we had maybe a different deck of cards, we could probably live in a really cool futuristic world, but I don't know, given the current circumstances, if it's going to be a world that actually does lead to more freedom and liberty and privacy. And I can say for sure at the moment it won't. So that's the Internet of Things. But the Internet of Bio-Nano Things, and I just want you guys to be aware of this, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time, but if you search MIT and Internet of Bio-Nano Things, you'll already see there are some folks working on this research. And so nano, of course, nanotech, extremely small, tiny devices. I mean, this is used in the medical field. It's got a lot of applications. Computer science, obviously, quantum computing. It has a lot of applications more than just the scary stuff. I want to make that clear. I'm not here just to say all these tools are just the bad things. But what they imagine in the Internet of Bio-Nano Things is the technology is not going to be handheld anymore. It's going to be wearable, as we're already seeing, but it's also going to be injectable. And for some people, they're already choosing to do this. There's Sweden and a few other countries that have already started to have injecting chips into people's hands, where people can walk into the office and they can just check in. They don't have to talk to anybody. And it's sold to us as convenience. That no more slow time, having to talk to a human. Same thing, I see like Whole Foods and other businesses are going increasingly cashless, and you've got the Palm Pay. That's the first kind of step in that direction. You don't have to talk to anybody. In fact, the idea is you would have either, like the way we are now, it would be a phone, but let's say it was a wearable thing or it was an injectable thing. You walk into the grocery store, you get whatever you want, you don't talk to a single person, and you walk out. It's already got facial recognition cameras all over the entire store, so the moment you walk in, it scans your face, compares that to a database that already exists, where they have your bank history, they have your credit card, and then you buy what you want, you take it, it's scanning those things as well, and then the moment you walk out, it deducts it from your account. Like, that's already here. It's already happening, and that's the future that many people would like for us to be in. And if that's something that appeals to you, that's great. But again, having to think about what that means for privacy, I don't know. I don't know that I really want to go that far into giving my privacy just to get some groceries. And I mean, how many places have you guys been to where cash is no longer welcome? I mean, I'm sure it's happening more and more in a place like this around here than in even Houston, but we're seeing it out there. So the Internet of Bio-Nano Things, though, would be sensors inside our bodies using nanotechnology that are also interacting with the antennas and the different sensors in the external world, right? So it doesn't just go to the Internet of Things and devices externally, but devices within our human body as well, where we become a part of that web or that internet. Now I want to show you some fun headlines that I found. Just for those who aren't aware of some of these different tools that are already existing. We're talking about potential future, potential future things, but what about what's already happened? If you can see, this is September 2018. Google suppresses memo revealing plans to closely track search users in China. The company forced employees to delete the document, which stated that a Chinese partner would, quote, have unilateral access to user data. I wanted to bring this up because, in case you needed one more reason not to trust or like Google, here you go, right? And for me, as an individual, I do think the tools that we choose to interact with matter, right? We can sit here and have a conversation about privacy, but at the end of the day, if we all just continue to use Apple and Google, even though there are plenty of other alternatives, then we're kind of just setting ourselves up for what I'm talking about here. I think we have to choose, again, we have to think about how we relate to technology and which tools we use and don't use. What is Project Maven? This is another one that's pretty old. It's the Pentagon AI project that Google employees walked out of. Some of you may remember this story from 5 years ago. There was a big walkout on Google's campus where some of the employees who learned that Google was developing algorithms that were going to be used by the military for drone assassination. And at the time, 5 years ago, it upset a lot of people and they walked out. But people have short attention spans and short memories, and guess what? It's gone forward anyways. This is just like last year, Pentagon's flagship AI effort. So after Google kind of stepped out of it, they did step away, but Microsoft and plenty of other big tech companies stepped in and said, hey, we'll help you develop this, no problem. And again, it's called Project Maven. It recently moved to a different government agency, but the point I wanted you to see is that it's still around. I think we got one more on that. Project Maven, startups backed by Google, Peter Thiel, Eric Schmidt, and James Murdoch are building AI and facial recognition surveillance tools for the Pentagon. So same companies and same people. Peter Thiel, we could talk about him for a while. Eric Schmidt, former guy at Google.
these companies are not just doing innocent things in the background. They're also, they're making some fun stuff, but they're also making death machines, essentially. And just in the conversation relating to social credit scores, anybody familiar with that term or not familiar, social credit scores? It's something that more and more people are becoming aware of because of places like China, but you also have, we're going to get into the Aadhaar system in India in just a moment. Now, private companies are doing something similar. This one I found from back in 2018 as well. Apple creates an iTunes device trust score based on your calls and emails. How many people know that if you're using iTunes, of course, you've got Apple all up in your stuff. They're also using their AI to scan your emails, your phone calls, and then based on the content in there, they give you a trust score. Now, this trust score, of course, has nothing to do with the government, and you're not necessarily being blocked out of services, but it's the beginning of something like that. Now, private companies, they have the right, I believe, to do what they want. You, of course, should be aware of what you're signing up for and maybe not just click yes on every terms of service because you want that cool new app and you're going to use it 3 times and forget about it and it's going to stay running in your phone in the background collecting all your data forever. But, I guess technically they're telling you they're doing it. You're just not reading it. And here's one. This is a couple years ago too. Tracking phones. Google is a dragnet for police. And I want to make sure to read this line at the bottom. The tech giant records people's locations worldwide. Now investigators are using it to find suspects and witnesses near crimes, running the risk of snaring in the innocent. And they go on to kind of describe that. So I just wanted to give some examples in case anybody hasn't been paying much attention. Now this one is a bit of positive news in terms of the smart grid. Your vehicles made after 2014. I've heard 2004, but 2014 I think is really one of the cutoff points when all major vehicles have smart technology in terms of microphones. Most of them have, of course, GPS is built in. So just last week, U.S. Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts, right here, sent a much needed letter to car manufacturers asking them to clarify a surprisingly hard question. Answer: what data do cars collect? Who has the ability to access that data? Private companies can often be a black box of secrecy that obscure basic facts of the consumer electronics we use. This becomes a massive problem when the devices become more technologically sophisticated and capable of collecting audio, video, geolocation data, as well as biometric information. And the letter says, as cars increasingly become high-tech computers on wheels, they produce vast amounts of data about passengers, drivers, pedestrians, and other motorists, creating the potential for severe privacy violations. This could reveal sensitive personal information, location history, driving behavior, and help data brokers develop detailed profiles on users. So the smarter everything is getting, the more data it's collecting on you. And not just you, but the people around you, whether you like it or not, right? So for all the Teslas and the other vehicles that are getting these cameras all around them, which help them interact. And if you're in a Tesla or some of the other vehicles, you see how if you get too close to the curb, the sensors start to go off and they let you know, hey, watch out. Well, the way they're able to do that is with all this technology we're talking about. But they're not just seeing the curb and kind of ignoring everything else. They're gathering data about people and objects within your vicinity, but they are absolutely recording your conversations. And that's not to say that there's a specific person listening to every single one of your conversations. I'm not saying that. In fact, one of the problems that these companies have, if they're collecting so much data, it's hard to sift through it, and that's where AI is helpful. And that, they need something to, hey, tell me what these people are saying and how I can market them, our latest gadget or this thing. So oftentimes it's not about like the government's here spying on you and they're going to put you in jail because you said the wrong thing on the internet, although we're not too far from that and some places are already doing that. It can be as simple as just trying to sell you more crap that you don't need, right? But the point is there's so much data on us that we have given up voluntarily by participating in these devices. And what I was saying about 2014, I've been told by some technologist friends that vehicles before 2014 don't have this technology. And I've heard somebody else say you got to go back to 2004 and before. But definitely older vehicles wouldn't have these kinds of things going on them. So there's trade-offs, right? And this is why I keep saying we have to think about our relationships. You want that cool new 2023 whatever, and it's got all the amazing things. And yeah, it's a super useful vehicle. But you have to think about what am I giving up in the process of that. And maybe you decide, you know what, when I get in my car, I'm not going to have a conversation. I'm not going to have private conversations in my car. I'm going to tell friends like, hey, if we need to talk about things that doesn't mean it's illegal, but just something that you want just between you and that person, probably not saying it in your smart car is the best place to do it. Not saying it in your smart house or in front of your Samsung TV or in front of these things. I mean, it sounds silly, but for those who value privacy, you might want to start taking these things into consideration, and whether you choose to opt out totally or just make some different decisions at different points and rethink that relationship. You guys with me? Yeah. Can I get a glass of water real quick? All right, we're going to talk about my book next. And I do have a few copies with me. I didn't bring a whole lot because I traveled lightly from Houston. But if anybody wants to pick one of these up, we have them for sale. All right, water is life. So all that work I've been doing, from getting spied on by Houston Police Department, diving down the smart city technology with what was going on in Houston, it led me to writing this book. This is the second edition that I just released last year, but the original version came out in January 2020, right before we heard about this thing called COVID-19. And my book had nothing to do with COVID-19, but in many ways, I don't like to say predicted, but it could see some of the writing on the wall in terms of what was coming. I was paying attention to folks much more, I would say, kind of knowledgeable than myself. You had digital rights organizations, you had lawyers, you had AI scientists and others back as far as 2016 and 2017, and even people like Elon Musk warning about how quickly these things were advancing. Do you know that in the United States, there's only one state that has a law to protect you from facial recognition, and that's Illinois. No other state has any kind of protection for your face. And your biometrics, like, it might sound silly, but your biometrics, your retina, your fingerprints, all these things, our DNA obviously, are so important and so valuable, and that's why so many companies are after this stuff as well. So there's a company called Clearview AI, you can look them up. They have one of the largest non-governmental facial recognition databases in the world, and they used it by developing a tool that all it does is scrape social media, because guess what? For the last 15, 20 years, we've been voluntarily giving our faces with selfies and putting them all over the internet. So they developed a tool that would go into social media and gather as many faces as possible. And they've amassed this incredibly, billion plus face database. And through that, have now been able to develop some algorithms, and they sell this access to this database to police, to pretty much anybody who will pay. But they sort of operate in this kind of legal gray area. There's no laws saying that what they're doing is illegal or wrong, or even limiting on how they can do it, other than in Illinois. So I could see that where we were headed, and when I wrote this book, it was, as you see there, written as kind of like a warning of where I think things are going, but also kind of a guide, and saying, okay, if we see what's coming, or we see that the world is getting increasingly smaller and less privacy, and I think less privacy historically leads to less liberty. If you can't be free in your own affairs, your own thoughts, your own mind, that can get pretty dangerous, history has shown us. And so I wanted to write this book to say, hey, things are getting bad. I hope you guys are going to pay attention. And here's some of my ideas about how we could navigate that. Here's some ideas about how we could rethink that relationship. And also kind of preparing for what it might be like to be in a world with little to no privacy. I don't use a cell phone. I try to limit my interactions with that world in some ways, but I also think that is a give and take, right? Unfortunately, there's no way to walk out right now in the public space and not be surveilled one way or the other. And some would say, well, in the public, we have no guaranteed right to privacy, only in your home, right? But people are packing their homes full of listening devices and watching devices, so maybe we don't even have privacy in our own homes. The point is, we should at least be aware of what's going around us. I can't tell you the amount of times I've had this conversation, especially with younger folks. Like, I have 6 nieces and nephews that are all 13 and under, and they're growing up very much normalized, this is all normal to them, this sort of world that we're growing up in. So unless mom or dad or weird Uncle Derrick has a conversation with them and says, have you ever thought that when your face is in the phone all day and you're scrolling through your millionth TikTok thing, somebody's monitoring your traffic, somebody's listening to what you're saying, I don't think most adults are preparing their kids for the realities of the internet and just the surveillance that exists around us, or even talking to them saying, hey, just a short 20 years ago, things were, it sounds so funny when you try to describe like what the early 2000s were to somebody. It's like, this is just 20 years ago. I mean, I graduated high school in 2003, and I remember seeing people start picking up smartphones shortly after that. And so, I mean, this wasn't a long time ago. And in this short period of time, we've already just allowed technology to change us for the better, for the worse. I'll let you guys decide. But it's important to think about that, how quick things can change.
Next is a clip from James Corbett with a solution-based episode.
Welcome back, friends. Welcome back to Solutions Watch. I'm your host, James Corbett of CorbettReport.com, coming to you in December of 2023. And stop me if you've heard this before. Control oil and you control nations. Control food and you control the people. Well, okay. That was a very, very poor imitation, but that was, of course, an imitation of Heinz Alfred Kissinger, better known to the public as Henry Kissinger, aka the recently departed Henry Kissinger. And if you don't know about, well, Kissinger's recent death and the lowlights of his ignoble career, then you have some catching up to do. So I will direct you in the direction of my recent flashback episode 106 on Meet Henry Kissinger, which is the visualization of that 2009 podcast episode I had going through some of the, the lowlights of Kissinger's career. But that quotation that I just poorly imitated there is one of those ones that if you are in the conspiracy realist space, you have no doubt come across over the years. It is bandied about quite a bit, and it is generally put forward that supposedly, allegedly, Kissinger in the 1970s sometime said something about control oil and you control nations, control food and you control the people. There's also a variation that involves control money, etc. Well, like so many of these quotations that get bandied around in the alternative media, there's absolutely no sign, no proof, no source whatsoever for this. So giant asterisk on that if you want to go actually perpetuating that quotation as if it were real. Nonetheless, like many of these quotations, although there is absolutely no sign that it came directly from the horse's mouth in this case, it certainly has the ring of truth to it. Because yes, control oil and you can control nations, as we have seen, as, for example, as I documented in the Big Oil documentary. Or if you look at control food and you control the people, I think that should be self-evident to anyone paying attention to world history in general, let alone the history of the last few years. And this should not be revelatory or groundbreaking insight to people in the Corbett Report audience, who might remember that I opened up this year at CorbettReport.com with an editorial series on what is the future of food, which I followed up with who is behind the Great Food Reset, and I capped off with the future of food is ours to decide. If you don't remember those particular reports, I will commend them to your attention. I think they are important reports going forward, and I think I'll have more to say on that in the near future. I also covered earlier this year the Future Food False Flag, episode 438 of the Corbett Report podcast, where I talked in great detail about the literal attack on the food system that is taking place and the way that the overall food supply is increasingly under fire from the powers that shouldn't be, as they are attempting a great food reset, to reset your dinner plate, as it were. And why would they do that? Well, again, regardless of whether Kissinger actually said it or not, certainly there is a concerted attempt that is happening Farmer Gates on down to control the food supply in order to better control the people. But this is Solutions Watch, so I will take all of that problem and the crisis for granted. We know about the problem, right? And if not, please do follow the links to those previous reports where you can find out more about them. But it's Solutions Watch, so let's concentrate on a solution today. A simple, perhaps deceptively simple solution: community gardening. Something that, well, most people in the situation they're in can probably start doing today, even those in urban environments. And I say that advisedly. Well, this, again, should not be a groundbreaking or revelatory idea. I have talked about it in the past. For example, you might recall back in the beginning of 2015, as part of the Asia Pacific Perspective video series. Remember that one? I talked to Brock West, now video editor extraordinaire Brock West, then Asia Pacific Perspective editor, Brock West, about community gardening efforts that he was involved in at that time. So I'll put that flashback in the links if you're interested. I've also talked about the subject with regards to, for example, guerrilla gardening back in episode 299 of the Corbett Report podcast, where I looked at urban gardening, guerrilla gardening, activists creating food out of food deserts. There's a lot of information in that report. I also talked about community gardening in Good News This Week, the New World Next Week edition for November of 2021, the Thanksgiving edition, where James Evan Pilato and myself, we covered that concept of community gardening. So I have talked about this over the years, but it's not like you need the Corbett Report to tell you about community gardening. Everyone knows about this activity, right? Right? Well, maybe. But how often do we think about it? We know there is a food crisis on the way. We know that the powers that shouldn't be are trying to get you to eat the bugs and trying to get you to accept the bio-lab-produced gunk that will, oh my God, impossible meat. Yeah, I can't believe it's not meat. Well, you better believe it's not meat and that it's not going to be good for you. So we obviously need to start taking the food supply back into our own hands to the extent possible. And yes, of course, there will be those people who always, well, actually, you can't grow everything you need. So don't take any steps whatsoever towards food self-sufficiency, right? Because you can't get 100% all in one step. Therefore, don't try. Anyway, let's counteract that. Let's show what can be done just by, in fact, not even going very far outside of your home in some cases. Again, I'm speaking very specifically because as part of, as you may or may not know, Brock West, video editor extraordinaire Brock West, was over here in Japan just a couple of weeks ago, helping me to film some things related to, for example, this food concept that we're talking about today. And as part of that, we did have a chance to go down to Osaka, and it was, well, mostly work, but some play. We got, for example, to see a gig by Corbett Report subscriber / supporter Tsuyoshi Dr. Blues Matsuo and Mojo at the Highlander Pub in Osaka. That was a very fun little trip that I got to make and to meet some Japanese supporters here. Very interesting. And also, we got to meet, hang out with, and interview Brian, who is a organic farmer, an organic non-GMO farmer, who is increasingly tied into the organic farming community there in Osaka. And he also runs the No Mask channel on Odyssey, so that will be in the links so that you can go and check out his Odyssey channel. But I had the chance to talk to him about community gardening. So myself and Brock West and my friend and bandmate Sean Smith went out there to record a little interview and some various footage for some of the things that I'm working on. And we got a chance to talk to him about the concept of community gardening, the community garden that he has joined and is participating in, what he has learned from it, and the way that it's growing forward from here. So let's take a listen to a bit of that interview. So tell us how you got started in doing this DIY gardening.
How I got started? Toilet paper.
What?
Well, at the beginning of the pandemic, I remember standing in a line of about 100 people who were ready to snatch up all the toilet paper because they thought that there would be a shortage of paper and it was all going to the masks. So I remember standing in line, and when the doors of the supermarket opened, this flood of humanity comes running on both sides of me. And I told myself, don't run. You're still human. Walk. And I just thought after that experience, if they can, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, they, and I'm sure your viewers will understand, but if they can create that kind of fear over toilet paper, what kind of fear can they create over a food shortage, or even more importantly, a water shortage? So
what was your position at that time with regards to your food security or insecurity?
I probably was like every other common bloke. I just ate everything that came from the supermarket and expected to see the the perfectly round and perfectly formed tomatoes and without any holes. And, I was just like your regular guy. And when that incident occurred at the supermarket and this field here opened up, I just had to jump on it and just started learning.
Yeah. So tell us about where we are and what we're doing here. What is this?
Well, this is a rental. All of these are rental spaces here in Ibaraki City, here in Osaka. And a lot of the spaces here are rented out by people who have been doing this for years and years and years. And I'm actually the youngest in this community. And I'm basically just, it's not only about growing my own food, but it's also about trying to understand like how our ancestors survived. I mean, our ancestors didn't go to the big box down the street and buy all of their agricultural needs. They had to use natural materials like I use here. I use bamboo and natural twine. And I kind of just want to understand how they did it. So it's kind of a test. It's kind of a test, kind of my own research, but also it's nice to have your own homegrown vegetables at home.
Absolutely. So you've been doing this about 3 or 4 years?
I've been in almost 3 years now.
Okay, and I assume the people in the community help contribute their ideas?
Daily. There isn't a day that goes by that somebody doesn't teach me one little point that, it's all part of the greater knowledge of growing your own. Mm.
Did you know that this place existed before you started looking for it?
Yes, actually, I lived up there.
So you were looking down on it.
I was looking down, and years ago I would look down and honestly, I mean, literally and figuratively, I'd look down at the people here and think, look at those people, slugging through the mud and all the dirt and the cow manure, and I just looked down on them. And now here I am.
Yeah. So this has been here for, as you say, as long as you've been here, right?
Yeah.
And people are teaching each other. For people who can't see at home, we are definitely in an urban environment with lots of houses. This is a residential area. Talk to the people at home who are thinking, I can't do that in my place. There's nothing like this. I need more space.
Anybody can do this. You just need some good soil, which you can buy. You need good sun. And you just need to have confidence that nature is going to provide, the plants are going to grow. It's not really that difficult. And if you do mess up and have to replant or something just doesn't come out as well as you want it, just try again next season,
Okay. Can you show us some of the stuff you're doing and what we can help you with?
Sure. Okay. You've already seen this in some of your footage. These are daikon radishes. I planted 40. Lost a few, but hey, that's normal.
Yeah.
That's normal. Yeah. I have also cilantro or coriander, they call it. Behind that, I have broccoli. I have cauliflower. On the other side, I'm growing red onions and all kinds of things.
And what are you looking forward to the most from this harvest?
I'm not really looking forward to this harvest per se, but the first year of doing it was just learning the basic techniques, okay? And I've got that pretty much down. What I'd like to do is, in the next stage is to learn how to make your own seeds, because that's also a skill in itself. Of course, it's all great on your dinner table, and at night, sometimes I look down and I say, I grew this, and I grew this, and I grew this, and like, hey, 70% I grew myself. Yeah. It's a very...
Make your own seeds, that's easy. Just when you're done eating, there's some seeds, you go plant them in the garden, it's Bob's your uncle.
It's not that easy. Actually, a lot of these plants have to flower, and a lot of them do, and once they flower, that's where you get the seeds from.
All right. I'm looking forward to trying some stuff. What are you going to show me today?
Well, I'm going to show you how they make this kind of natural trellis in Japan using the straw, the rice straw. Yeah. I'd like to ask you to help me to prepare some soil for a couple of things I'm going to be planting. And we're actually going to pull up a daikon or two.
Awesome. Let's do it.
Are you a fan of pakuchi, cilantro?
Absolutely not, but I can stomach it.
It's really funny. It's a very 50-50 kind of thing. 50% people love it.
I don't get the soapy taste that some people say, but it's not a happy taste. But we'll try it.
Yeah. Very easy to grow, actually.
Good.
Very hardy plant. It's very easy to grow.
Now, once again, that is Brian, an organic, non-GMO farmer who is working in Osaka now and who is not only participating in that community garden, but also has contacts with the farming community and is really expanding his own knowledge as he propagates it forward to others, which is an important part of this learning experience that I think we'll highlight a bit later on. But essentially, yes, I went to go see that community garden and he showed me around and got me even planting and pulling some daikon and other such activities. Not as much as we would have liked, but there's never enough time when you're out there filming a bunch of stuff. But it was quite the experience, and I look forward to seeing his garden again in the future. But I think there is quite a few lessons to take out of it. One is that the organic farming aspect of what Brian is talking about is not, although of course it is about organic heirloom seeds and or non-GMO products, produce being sowed in the fields. Of course, that is part of it. But it's also about working with the land, working with natural ingredients, natural products and materials, not working with cheap store-bought plastic Chinese slave-made goods to the trellises and other such things that are required for the gardening. No. These are, as Brian likes to talk about, any time there is an opportunity for something natural, organic, something real to be used in the gardening, he prefers that. And one interesting example actually came while we were filming. I did not have the proper boom arm for the microphone that we were using, and you can't see it in that interview because obviously it was being held off camera by Sean Smith, but the boom that we were using was actually just a bamboo pole Brian had lying around in the garden, and we tied the microphone to the pole with some rope and it worked absolutely perfectly as a boom. You do not need store-bought manufactured products to do things that, well, presumably, assuming they had such problems back in older times, it would have been solved by something more like that. At any rate, we'll put it that way. And I think that's an important part of it. Another aspect, as I say, of what Brian is talking about here and what he stresses is the communal aspect, not just of the garden itself, but of the gardening, and more importantly, of the shared wisdom that is spread by people in the community garden to each other, learning your way forward, becoming a part of the community, and learning from others about, for example, the local farming practices or gardening practices that may not be familiar to you if you're not from that area, and that may have very specific, not just cultural tradition, but actual reasons for using. One of which Brian let me in on, was the practice of using momigara, rice husks, in these gardens. And there are a number of different uses. I'll throw in a link to a Japanese page if people can read Japanese or get it translated online, where there are a number of different ways to use momigara in the garden. But one that Brian learnt about and now employs in his own organic gardening involves using momigara as a form of pest control.
Okay, James, there's a very interesting custom here in Japan. After the rice harvest, there's tons of this, what they call momigara. This is basically the rice husk. And if you notice, there's a lot of the rice husks scattered around these plants. And one reason for that, and this is very interesting, imagine you're a slug and you're crawling along here with that, slimy little body. And these things start sticking to you. one after the other. Very, very irritating experience for the slugs, so they just basically move on.
Once again, Brian, organic, non-GMO farmer of the No Mask channel, sharing some of the insights that he has learned about organic, non-chemical forms of pest control utilized in the Japanese garden. And as I say, there are many other uses for the momigata, the rice husks, as well, but that's one of them. And it's the type of thing that you learn when you join a local garden, community garden, and start learning from the other people there that you may not have known. You may have seen those rice husks spread around, but not quite. Why is that there? Well, that's why. And those are the types of things that we can learn from each other as we start growing in this abundant world that is around us. And that strikes me as one of the things that really draws me to this solution as a solution for Solutions Watch, is that of all the solutions that I cover, this one in particular, the act of gardening, planting something in the earth and seeing it grow and sprout and become something else to give its abundance, which then provides even more seeds so that you could do that again in the future. As has been observed before, you can count the number of seeds in an apple, but you can't count the number of apples in a seed. That is a profound and remarkable truth. It truly is miraculous how abundant the earth is. And to a certain extent, I think we are engineered into a scarcity mindset that it's a fixed pie and it's a shrinking pie and we're all fighting each other for every scrap of square inch. And, it's a dog-eat-dog world and we all got to hate each other and the powers that be are oppressing us. The world itself is abundant. Things will grow if we plant them and tend to them. And that is a remarkable thing to keep in mind. I think there's a mentality that goes along with gardening, let alone the physical act of getting your hands dirty and working with the earth, that I think is good for the soul as well as good for the stomach. Anyway, well, to get all philosophical on you. But as usual, Solutions Watch is not a spectator sport. It is a participatory activity. So I'm particularly interested in hearing feedback from Corbett reporters in the crowd about your own experience with community gardening, good or bad, or in between, as most things usually are, and your own experience of what is in your area, what isn't in your area, how you could contribute to that, what you plan to do in the future, maybe what you harvested this year. I think all of that is valuable feedback for people in the Corbett Report community to start learning from each other. And I know that there are Corbett Report members like Gavin Mounsey, who's recently appeared on Meteor Monarchy to talk about fermentation and other gardening tips. So hopefully people like that will be able to contribute their knowledge in the comment thread as well. So Corbett Report members are, as always, invited to log into corbettreport.com and leave your feedback there in the comments for today's episode of Solutions Watch. I think I'm going to leave this one here today, but why not? Let's watch James digging up a daikon, huh? Anyway, I thank you for your time and attention today, and I look forward to talking to you again in the near future.
Well, James, that's a pretty nice one. Should taste really good. But why don't you try to handle that baby?
You say that with such glee that I'm beginning to dread this, but okay, let's give her a pull. All right, yeah. Beautiful. Which one tastes better?
Size does matter, but actually this one.
Okay. Here we go. I know. I've been away for a little bit of time. Everybody has to have a little bit of time off. Calm down. Look, it's GB News. They're such an impartial news network. I mean, it was so It's a breath of fresh air that they come along and they didn't give so much. Oh no, they're worse than the. Oh right, okay, yeah, they are. There's been no more on the Zionist News Network than GB News during this time. It's been completely, they don't push back at all. One of the first interviews I saw after October 7th was the one with Hanyanya, his wife, and the other lady. And it was awful. It was awful. You could see that on News Pass. It's a terrible, terrible display of allowing people to create the narrative, because that's what Israel are doing constantly. Create the narrative. Okay, you're incredible no matter what they say. This guy is incredible. Literally, he is incredible. All of the people who are representing Israel on the news like this, the public spokesmen, are incredible. Some of the things they say are incredible. The hypocrisy is incredible. The lack of, it's the lack of awareness to the how relative the arguments are. So the relative arguments being like, the Israeli state has arrested Palestinian women and children and held them, occupied land, held them in detention, in prison, kids, for years and years and years. And this now is the flip, isn't it? The same thing's happening to them, and it's the worst thing ever. Yet they cannot see, or propaganda does not work if you understand relativism. And relativism leads you nowhere anyway. It leads you backwards and forwards, doesn't it? It leads you backwards and forwards. You got nothing. What are you going to do? I'm going to shout at them, and I'm going to call you a hypocrite because you're doing the same, and I'm going to say you're doing the same, and I'm going to say you're doing the same, and I'm going to say you're doing the same. So it leads you nowhere anyway. But ignoring that it exists, that you're doing the same as the other people, is cringe. It's cringe. It causes, this is what they don't understand. I wonder if this is a historic trait. I know that's a dangerous thing to say in the climate where everybody's being called an anti-Semite or not. But I'm talking about ancient Canaanites. I'm talking about a bunch of Canaanites. Jewish people are genetically 50% plus ancient Canaanites. Palestinian people are genetically 50% plus ancient Canaanites. But they're clearly different. They clearly got different influences, but they're clearly cousins as well. Yet they treat each other as badly constantly, and they always both claim victimhood. That we can say. There is relativism for you. Both are doing the same things. Doesn't make the things good. It would be a fallacy. And here we are with one. This is what's his name? Elon. It's Elon, but it's spelled E-Y, I think. Elon Levy. Let's look at the title. Well, it says Elon Levy reflects on flabbergasting Sky News interview with Kay Burley. Now, Kay Burley's a bit of a flabbergast there, everybody. Oh my God, Kay, sometimes she rocks my world, the things she says, and what she allows them to get away with, the Israeli. GB News only, the presenters at GB News are only the only competition they got to up really high of being Zionist collaborators during this period has to be Kay Burley herself. Really, really, these guys. Anyway, they don't put out their best to speak to you. They put out the people who are most trained in propaganda. What does that mean? They're going to lie to you. Let's listen to them lie. Let's hear how much GB News pushes back. Or are they just trying to score points over a competing news network? Let's find out on this news pasty with me, Johnny Vedmore.
This is heartbreaking. We're talking about 240 hostages, including 30 children, who have been held in a dark tunnel now by the terrorists who massacred and raped their way through these people's communities.
Right, okay, right. They massacred and raped their way through the communities. Well, they did massacre their way through the communities. The rhetoric, of course, is hot, isn't it? Well, all these people have been held in a deep, dark tunnel. The tunnels that they have had a hard time producing these tunnels. So far, they produced basements that were there previously, like hospital basements. Look, this is a tunnel. Oh, it's a basement. Yes, but down, if you look, there is a door and it leads to the hospital. Yes, that's still a basement. I mean, these guys are special, but still. This is the scene. He's setting the scene. So this is how propaganda works. He wants you to feel sad. He wants you to be on their side. He wants you to feel like, how can a human possibly feel anything but repulsed by the idea of young children, babies, rape, murder, and being held in tunnels? How can anybody argue against that? And that's the point, isn't it? How can anybody argue against those arguments? How can people argue against them? Because it's hard to argue against them, isn't it? Which is why they use them as arguments.
On October 7th, and every minute that Hamas continues to hold our hostages in the dark and keep their families in the dark is an ongoing crime against humanity. Now we're doing everything we can to get them.
Again, every moment Palestinian children and women are being held in prisons all over the place by Israelis. It's a crime against humanity. And how do people respond to that? October the 7th. How do people respond to that sort of the barbaric nature of the past 75 years? October 7th. That's how people react. I can't stop them. Just because I say it's true and it happens doesn't mean it's my fault. Doesn't mean it's your fault. You should be able to say, if you torture people over a 75-year period, they might massacre you. I'm just saying. Not agreeing with it. Don't like it. Not a big fan of the massacring. I prefer it if people get on. But as a messenger, don't shoot me. I got to tell you, there's pasty all over the place. As you see, he's from the National Pasty Diplomacy Directorate, the Pasty Minister's Office.
Home. There is a deal in place to secure the release of the first 50 hostages. We're starting with the women and children, and we hope to continue and bring home all of the hostages, the men and the women, the old and the young, the soldiers and the civilians. We're committed to leave no one behind in the Gaza Strip.
Apart from the people you're bombing, apart from the people you're that are going to be collateral damage in amongst the 3,000 dead children. Oh my God! I mean, massacre. A massacre. What's bigger than a massacre? If a massacre is 300 people, what's 3,000 children? This is what I mean by the relative arguments. Hamas hold them in tunnels. They've killed over 10,000 people in bombing, and they weren't Hamas. The majority weren't Hamas. That's beyond war crimes. The guy you're looking at is selling you that. That's what he's selling you. That's okay. That's what he's there to sell you. It doesn't mean that you have to agree with Hamas. You have to agree with kidnap. You have to agree with rape. You have to agree with murder. You have to agree that he's selling you propaganda.
What have you made of the British media coverage from what you've seen?
Here we go. Internal attacks, British media.
It really depends. And as a government spokesman, it's not my job to give a telling off to specific media outlets. But I think it's fair to say Israel hasn't been given a fair shake in this conflict.
Oh, yeah. They haven't been given a fair shake. They got wall-to-wall blanket coverage about the horrors of October the 7th, and then a load of people saying, hey, calm down, don't go too fast. And then the horror of everybody watching as they went too fast and they killed women and children. Okay. Then it's hard, public opinion, it's hard when you're going around murdering women and children to keep up a smiley, happy face, and have people look at you and go, oh, you're really good people. Even the worst and the most corrupt media will have to question that eventually.
We've done about 150 interviews, television and radio, since this war began, and sometimes I'm really flabbergasted by the questions I get. We're trying to present our side of the story. We're explaining why we're having to fight this awful.
Did you hear that? They're trying to present outside of the story. The narrative setting people who are centrally involved in the affair and have been for 75 years and trying to, I mean, that's just laughable.
We're telling the truth about the October 7th massacre. We're talking about the lengths that we are going to bring our stolen children back. And sometimes, no matter what facts.
Okay, you're explaining the lengths you're going to. What? The 10,000 plus people who have been you've slaughtered to bring back the children, to bring back a smaller amount of children. You killed how many children? So they say it's like 3,000 plus. I really hope. I don't even like hearing those figures or repeating those figures. I'm thinking they might be true. I can't imagine. Can you imagine that? Can you line up? Can you do the thought experiment? Can you do it now? Can you line up? Look, over there's say 300 Israeli people, and over there's 10,000 Palestinian people, and they equate as the same life force. That group of people, like, you choose one or the other, or you choose both, or you choose to kill. But it's just, and don't get me wrong, if Hamas had Israeli weapons, can you imagine what the death count would have been? But that's not the way it is.
We present, there are people who will always twist it in a way that makes Israel out to be the baddies, in a way that really requires intellectual somersaults and gymnastics.
What, the fact that you lied about there to be in tunnels under the hospital, it seems, lots of lies about a lot of the situation, the clearing of the place, the murder. It is really hard to see how this guy can keep a straight face.
To try to pull that off. But we have to continue telling the story, why we are fighting this war, the war that Hamas declared on us with the...
Yeah, well, I think the war's been going on for 75 years. I think he knows that too. There's a lot of pasta here.
The 7th massacre, and why we have no choice to win, because we can't go back to a world in which the terrorists just over the border, the army of terror just over the border in the Gaza Strip, can hurt our people ever again.
I think you were alluding a little bit to an interview with Kay Burley earlier today.
I was speaking to a hostage negotiator this morning. He made the comparison between the 50 hostages that Hamas...
Again, here we go. Okay, so it's a bit glitchy. This video's a bit glitchy. This is just what it is like on GB News. That's just the quality of GB News. And they're obviously playing this cast. You can see this is lower quality as well. And they're replaying Sky News. They're like, oh, we could get an attack in. They've become like attack dogs attacking each other, or attacking internal media organizations. So GB News has set itself as being the alternative. But the only alternative is we'll show you how much of an alternative is we are by attacking the other people. So we're the alternative because we attack them. Yet we'll still pump the same things down your throat and the same fear, yet pretend we're your friend. In a really, really obvious way. I mean, the vaccine stuff, they had people going, oh yeah, you should be be able to speak about these things, and putting on really weak people who don't speak about them that much and pretending they're speaking about it, and at the same time pushing out fear porn news about numbers in pandemic. So the keeping people watching it and then scaring them. It seems like an operation that, oh, we can't capture this part of the audience because they have gone to the independent media. Let's become a little bit independent by attacking internally. And it looks just like brothers and sisters again, Canaanites fighting each other.
To a hostage negotiator this morning, he made the comparison between the 50 hostages that Hamas has promised to release, as opposed to the 150 prisoners that are Palestinians that Israel has said that it will release. And he made the comparison between the numbers and the fact that does Israel not think that Palestinian lives are valued as highly as Israeli lives?
That is an astonishing accusation.
freeing. How did that make you feel?
No, it's not an astonishing accusation.
Really?
It's not an astonishing accusation because there is massive discrepancy in every statistic, every single number. The number of people Israel killed to the number of Palestinian people of Palestinian origin who kill Israelis. The difference in numbers every year is extraordinary. The difference in this is extraordinary. You see it. They've killed 10,000 people in response to a few hundred. And a few hundred is not to belittle it. It's to say that that's how many people were killed. And then they see, okay, well, that means that we've got to take more life. The same thing happened. What was I can't Gilad. I can't remember his name. The soldier who was released. One soldier released, and they released Israel released thousands. Wasn't it over 1,000 hostages got released from Israeli prisons? The fact is that a lot of these people who are being, and I say hostage because a lot of these people being held in Israeli prisons are prisoners of war who aren't being treated as prisoners of war and who don't get fair trials. They're looked down upon, they're seen as something else, and they're not as bad as they're being made out to be. And so there's loads of them that they just shouldn't be there. So it's easier to give them away as well. But the fact is that this is the situation in a place of occupation. You occupy not only land, you occupy services too. Occupy prison services, police services, defense services, armies, all of this. Occupy.
I've given many interviews, and that was the first question that left my jaw on the floor. The idea that since Israel is releasing 150 Palestinian prisoners convicted of violent offenses in exchange for 50 hostages, that somehow means that we care less.
Violent offenses, little kids who throw stones and stuff like this. I mean, it is insane. It's insane. Really
about
sad.
Palestinian lives, because that is the deal that we have agreed to. Obviously, if we could do a one-for-one swap, that would be preferable. Obviously, if we could get our innocent hostages back for free, all 250 of them, 50 days ago, nearly 50 days ago, that would have been preferable.
And if you could have done a war and only killed the same amount of people, that would be preferable. And that's the relative argument. That's where relativism leads you. And if we had done this, then that would be preferable. But that's not how it was, because we just decided to bomb and murder and do it indiscriminately and just blame, there was one Hamas leader over there. Yes, but you've killed 300 people in one bombing. Yes, but there was one Hamas leader, and so what? He's hanging around amongst other people. No evidence, nothing. I mean, some of the propaganda that's been pushed out is awful. And yes, we all know this isn't a secret. You know, everybody is aware that these people in power in Israel, not the Israeli people, but these people in power and Zionists in general, look down upon Palestinian people. They are worth less. We know that. So this guy is lying straight to your face. He knows it.
The idea that you take Israel's willingness to release people who have been convicted of violent offenses in order to get innocent children who've been held in a tunnel nearly 50 days ago.
What was terrible is the best parody to put behind this guy speaking now would be violins, like Schindler List violins, isn't it? Because that's what it's become like. It's become a parody of itself. What happened once to over and over again throughout history to Jewish people is awful, and everybody says, "Oh, it's terrible, it's terrible." But there's a repeated history of, listen, this guy's lying directly to people's faces. The previous generation lied directly to people's faces. The previous generation lied directly to, and so on and so forth. And it's, you know, there's a point where we have to say we are all predisposed in different cultures to act and present certain behaviors and certain manners, and we know that some are antisocial. So people will say, well, what's the difference between an Englishman and a Romanian? What is the difference? Well, to a Welshman, I can tell you they both look the same. but what is the difference? If we're going to get into racial divides and what people are worth, what's the difference? Well, it depends where they're from. Like, if you take the worst council estate kid from, say, Coville in Leicestershire, if you would take the worst council estate kid and you would stick him next to the worst Romanian kid from some Bucharest, outskirts suburbs of Bucharest or something like that, if you were to put them together, they would probably present the same manners, the same human behavior, the same negative human behavior from being brought up, same peeing around the place, smearing, whatever, the worst things you can imagine. Now you take the most high end and you see the same manners as well, because everybody is roughly the same, but our cultures and societies and the way we're brought up and the way we're taught to live our lives make us different, don't they? Very much human beings on the spectrum of shit smearers all the way up to intellectual thinkers. They are all roughly the same in nearly every single country. Nearly every single country has the people who are the worst and the people who are the best. And they all do learn or don't learn or do things that are awful or don't do things that are awful in different ways. But then there are loads of other traits that come from culture, from culture. Now, what we're not allowed to discuss, and this is where I love to discuss, this is what I want to discuss, is how that culture then affects the behavior of entire nations and entire people. And then you define those people by those behaviors, but those behaviors are not from their human, their genetics, it's from their culture. So they do have a superiority complex. We know this. This is obvious. So it's so hard to tiptoe around this crap. But the fact is that the reason why the Jewish people have a superiority complex is because they truly believe they're God's people. And in the same way, you go to the same type of people, the same people in the realms of political Islam as you would in political Israel or political Zionism or political Judaism, whatever you want to call it. If you look and you compare the two together, you discover the same people saying the same things and both have superiority complex because they both believe they're God's people. And then you look around, you look at all the problems in the world that are due to cultures, religions, things that affect a nation state, a people, how they identify. So these Canaanites, one set of Canaanites over here identify as Palestine, one set of Canaanites identify as Israelites. They get brought up in completely different ways. And because of it, they have conflict when it comes into meeting within society. And they both believe that they're superior. So what are you going to get? Both sides fighting. If the Palestinians had the same weapons that the Israelis had, and the Israelis had the same capabilities as the Palestinians, you would still see fighting, wouldn't you? You'd still see them fighting each other. You'd still see them, and you'd see the Palestinians brutalizing the Israelis, and you'd see loads of people saying, that's disgusting, what are you doing? What are you doing? It's the way it is. It's all relative, because it's not about Israel, it's not about Palestine, it's not about all of those, it's about the power dynamics of humans and how culturally things within our specific cultures make us manifest certain behaviors more in one area than another. And I am openly saying that the history have shown that wherever the Israelites do roam, they end up conflicting with people because culturally they do have superiority complex. And it's not the people, the people like the lower down echelons of society, where people are just going to be getting on with their lives and just doing stuff. And yeah, they do the religious stuff, but they just get on with their life. We're talking about the people who believe they're superior and rise to the top because our structures are made in a way that the people who believe they're superior and have the most ego and have the most ability to potentially lie to your face rise to the top. And now we're in this place where we can't openly say, but those people over there act this way and those people act differently. We're not allowed to say that anymore. We're not allowed to say it because it would be racist, etc. But it's true. It's true. Race has implications on the way behavior manifests, but culture has more influence. And mixed together, you see reoccurring themes throughout history. And the reoccurring theme seems to be that eventually there becomes a bloodbath of the Jews. And we all want that to stop. We all want that to stop. And I truly believe it's all about political ideology floating to the top and the willingness. If you've got a home and if you've got a land permanently, you haven't been pushed out of your land once upon a time, and the political ideology rises to the top. That's one thing. But if you're occupying parts of someone else's land and the political ideology rises to the top, that leads to genocide. You have to get rid of the other people. You have to get rid of the competition. The political ideology that is out of control and led by those who believe themselves to be superior nearly always leads to the fall of eugenics and genocide. Every time. We are superior. We are superior. We keep telling ourselves we are superior. Where does that lead? It leads to saying we deserve more. We should have more. We should have more. This isn't fair. This isn't fair. This isn't fair. We should be treated differently. We no longer recognize what other people do. We only recognize what we do as being good. Everybody else is bad because they're not us. We are superior. I feel that coming off the whole of the Israeli argument only makes sense if you put that dynamic in place. If you put the superiority complex in place, political Judaism being controlled by people with extreme egos, this is why this makes sense. That's the only way this all makes sense. Everything that's happening only makes sense if the people in charge of Israel believe that they are superior and that they have the right to wipe out these people because they're meaningless. So this guy, and I've taken a long time to explain that. Sorry about that. This guy is telling you how disgusting that thought is. That is true. He knows it. He's wearing the pin. He's there representing on the world stage the people who are occupying the land of a weaker people, because it should be because they're God's people and superiority. You know, look back throughout history. See the people who thought they were the master race. See the people who thought they were God's people. See the people who thought they were the chosen ones. See the people who caused the tragedy based upon an ideology that leads to making more enemies than friends. And more enemies than friends leads to, again, genocide. So this is dangerous games. I think that if we keep going along this road, we will approach another genocide. We're seeing it now with the Palestinian people. That is a genocide, but we will see something much worse. Whether it will be the Jewish people, whether it be blacks, Arabs, whatever country around, whatever people, we're going to see it because we allow and we tolerate the idea of superiority, and we don't discuss it and we can't talk about it. And this news piece here is insignificant, really, but it's significant when you look at it through a certain prism and from a certain angle, that this is the manifestation of you're using the word manifestation quite a lot here, but this is the moment where you're able to see that it's a lie. that the press, the guy who's talking, the guy who's interviewing him, knows all of this. The guy who's speaking knows all of this. This is hypernormalization. They all know this is superiority complex. This is superiority complex.
And to turn that somehow into a narrative of dehumanization against Israel, as if that somehow is a reflection that we are the ones missing a moral compass. Really, I think insinuations like that are outrageous. It is Hamas that devalues lives. It is Hamas that devalues Israeli lives.
Here you go. So it's only the one side. It's only the one side. So why would it only be the one side? If you're thinking it from this point of view, why would it only be the one side? Because you're unable to see the other side. What if you go on the other side? What do you see? Oh, you see that that Hamas only exists because Israelis didn't give credence to Palestinian lives in the first place. And Israel created Hamas in certain ways, by proxy, supporting certain groups so that they could get rid of the socialist-leaning Palestinian organizations during the 80s. And it backfired on them, didn't it? Backfired on them big style. And it is Israeli officials who admit to that. They admit openly, yes, we did that. We supported these guys and it led to this. This is what they do. They've created the devil, and then they point at all of the Palestinian people and call them the devil. That's dangerous stuff. It's past evil.
And Palestinian lives, as we see from the reckless way that they've been trying to use innocent Palestinian civilians as human shields in this war, and as you can see from Israel's efforts to get them out of harm's way so that we can target the monsters who perpetrated that horrific, barbaric massacre on October 7th.
I've been very surprised by a lot of the reaction of certain prominent figures. Gary Lineker, the footballer, former footballer, being one of them, who recently shared a tweet from a prominent left-wing commentator in this country, Owen Jones, which basically was an interview he did with somebody saying that what Israel was engaging in was a textbook genocide.
So wait a minute. Oh my God, this is such an establishment knob-off. So they're like, I was really surprised that Gary Lineker retweeted an Owen Jones. Owen Jones is like, he's, I mean, but he can, at times like this, he can say the truth, and it's officially on his side of the fence, and he's allowed to speak within this stuff, and he's allowed to then say, oh look, this is oh look, I'm getting kudos for this. I'm getting kudos because it's a textbook genocide. It's a textbook genocide. It is a textbook. We know it's a textbook genocide. Yeah, it's obvious. It is textbook. But this is just the establishment pointing at the establishment, pointing at the establishment, pointing at the establishment. That's GB News. All I'm saying is establishment linked so much with the army. It's so strange how many of the people on there have like army links and stuff. That's very, very, it makes me very worried about where we're going in the direction, because politicians like Ed Balls and stuff now being in on news channels and stuff as well makes me feel uncomfortable. Makes me feel like the mask has fallen so much that the people who are pretending they're in charge of our country are now speaking directly to our face all the time to try and brainwash us, which is exactly what we're seeing. But this is the GB News establishment pointing at Gary Lineker establishment. I think is he still the highest paid person on the BBC? Still the highest paid? Easy target. So the BBC, the GB News pointing at Gary Lineker, pointing at Owen Jones, pointing at Raz Segal. Oh, it's a jerk off here. It's round in a nice big circle jerk, isn't it? It's just so annoying to behold, because it doesn't tell us anything. Owen Jones doesn't tell us anything. And yes, of course it is a genocide. But when it does tell us something, it tells us that GB News can't recognize a genocide.
Genocide.
Because the intent is expressed.
What noise was that? What was that?
in such unashamed
I just like that. Wait a minute, what was
genocide?
Because the intent is expressed.
Genocide.
Because the intent is.
What was that, Owen Jones? Do it again.
Because the intent is expressed.
What was that? What was that?
Because the intent is expressed. Because the intent is expressed.
Wow, that's amazing.
So explicitly,
Right,
so
wow.
directly.
I'm sorry, you know I love. God, it looks like drug addiction, doesn't it? I'm not going to say which one looks like drug addiction. You make up for yourself. Can you tell me in the comments which one of these looks like a drug addict? Can you tell me? I bet you can. I bet you can. I'm sorry, but really, let's move it forward. Let's hear that noise again that he makes. That's a real special noise. I might take that out and use it in the song. Here we go. Let's listen.
Genocide.
Because the intent is expressed so explicitly, so directly, in such unashamed ways, and it's continued to be expressed in this way.
I shouldn't be laughing because it's about genocide, but
in
still.
front of our eyes is a textbook case
of drug addiction. Genocide, yeah, sorry. But what was actually wrong with that clip, apart from him saying it was a case of genocide? And genocide being that you want to destroy a people in part or whole. That's and so it's a destruction of a people in part or whole. Same October 7th, that was a terrorist attack that is perpetrated by people who have genocidal intent. And to want to take over someone's land and remove a people and act like they don't exist is genocide, and that's what Israel are clearly doing. So what was wrong with that clip where he says, well, it looks like it's textbook genocide? It's not like it's like an objectionable, oh, he said he was a Zog and that he was a disgusting Jew or something like that. Nothing like that happened. There's no actual racism. There's no example of actual racism there. Or shocking. It's just people criticizing Israel. So GB News are just like helping to push forward this idea that, oh, you know, it's terrible. Look at how their coverage of all this terrible coverage against Israel. But it's just people discussing the fact that genocide is actually happening as it happens.
Gary Lineker, of course, works for the BBC as well. I mean, again, what do you make when you see people, prominent people, going out of their way to tweet something like that, under the guise, by the way, of trying to remain neutral? I'm not expressing a view, I'm just...
That's what he's doing, but how do you feel about this guy now expressing the opposite view as though he's just not expressing a view? This is what he's doing. So again, these are the people, this is what they do. They project out exactly what they do.
Saying you should have a look at this.
It's a really outrageous accusation, and I'm torn between wondering whether it's by people who are too stupid to open a dictionary and read the definition, or a question of projection. Because an act of genocide did take place on October 7th, when Hamas death squads invaded southern Israel and murdered everyone they saw as brutally as possible, when they burned people, beheaded people, tortured them, mutilated them, parents in front of their children, children in front of their parents, when they committed acts of...
This is a problem. I'm listening to this, and all I'm thinking is he talking about the Israelis over the past 75 years, or is he talking about the Palestinians and Hamas and all of the stuff that's come from the other side? What's he talking about? Because his side has done that more than anybody else in the history of that modern history of that region. There was no one else who has persecuted the people around in the area as much as these guys have done since 1948. It's gone on over and over again. Still happening. We'll watch it happening over 75 years of them doing this. And then at the end of it, when you see a reaction, it's like, well, this is terrible, and you should feel angry about this. So feel angry about it, but feel angry about it when anybody does it.
Barbaric rape. That was a campaign of systematic extermination by Hamas's army of terror, which tells us that it wants to perpetrate...
It wasn't right. Extermination means to get rid of everybody, yeah? That's what he's saying. But they went in for a terror attack. So it was about murder. It was about terrorism, about exterminating a very small amount of people, because there's no way they would be able to kill everybody, is there? That's not the way it works. It didn't systematically go to exterminate everyone. Again, what's he doing? He's evoking your memories. He's evoking your feelings. He's evoking your thoughts of a past, of a genocide, of a Holocaust, of the extermination of an entire people, of his people. He's evoking that inside you. But it's not true. It was a terrorist attack in response to occupation. We know what that was. It was brutal, horrible. Everything inside it was horrible. That's what happens when you occupy someone's land and they resist. You end up with a load of horrible outbursts of violence. That is what happens. If you don't want that to happen, you've got to stop occupying people's land and go a route of peace. Not go the route that when something like that happens, you kill 10,000 people, 3,000 children, and you act like you're the victims. That you're no longer the victims. Once you've killed more people than the other side, you're no longer the victims by far. You become the beheaders. You become so what's the difference between beheading someone and then burning to death painfully in their house because it's been hit by a missile? What is the difference between that? What is the difference? Again, it all ends up in the relative, the same thing. So if you're doing the same thing to the people who you're complaining about what they're doing to you, you're as bad as that person. You're as bad as those people. This is what we're seeing.
October 7th, and another October 7th, and a million October 7ths, as many as it takes to murder every man, woman, child in our country. And in response to
that's not what we've seen. No, that's not what we've seen. So he's saying that that's not what we've seen. This is an outburst that happens very rarely, and it was bound to happen at some point. It was going to give, because they're blockading an entire people, they're occupying an entire land, they're torturing the people of Gaza and have done for many years. And so you're always going to see this. So they can predict this, and then they can predict what they say. So they train up these guys for when it comes to the point when they need to say it.
Target the monsters who did that, going blue in the face, trying to get civilians out of harm's way, despite Hamas's efforts to embed itself in civilian areas in clear violation of humanitarian law.
What? Hey, come on. Embedding themselves into civilian areas. What, like settlers do. And then attack the people around so they can push people out. That's what's happening all of the time, isn't it? That's what's the people of Palestine and Gaza have to put up with all of the time, is being harassed all of the time. What happens eventually? When you push a button over and over again and the button says exploding human beings, what do you think eventually will happen?
So to take the suffering and the trauma that we have suffered, the deadliest massacre of Jews since the Holocaust.
But then, he's ignoring the Palestinians. He's ignoring them. He's ignoring all of those dead people. He just doesn't even think about them. And he's talking about how, that they would be comparing the two. He's not even thinking about, it's all about Israel. He's not thinking about the fact of all of the dead Palestinians. Of course he's not.
And to somehow turn that against us and turn us into the villains really shows an atrocious degree of total moral bankruptcy.
Talking about moral bankruptcy, what about that GB News, eh? Morally bankrupt. It started off morally bankrupt. This is like the pasty news network. This is really one of the gifts that keeps on giving, like Times Radio. They are what the future of authoritarianism looks like.
Last but not least, here is a fun clip from AM Wakeup. See you all next week.
Even more than Nikki Haley's highly suspect math skills. Wrong freaking one. There it is. I would like to show why she's no longer going to have a political career after last night. Because as much of a freaking clown, and I finally figured out who Vivek Ramaswamy is. I figured out who he is. Maybe throughout the course of the show, I can get together a mashup to show examples. But this exchange right now, or rather less exchange, more berating that Vivek does here should by miles, just completely destroy any chance that this woman, and I know she didn't have much to begin with, but people somehow kept their names, kept her name in the public for a little bit. Just listen to.
So foreign policy experience is not the same as foreign policy wisdom. I want everybody at home to note that I was the first person to say we need a reasonable peace deal in Ukraine. Now a lot of the neocons are quietly coming along to that position, with the exceptions of Nikki Haley and Joe Biden, who still support this, what I believe is pointless war in Ukraine. And I think those with foreign policy experience, one thing that Joe Biden and Nikki Haley have in common is that neither of them could even state for you 3 provinces in eastern Ukraine that they want to send our troops to actually fight for. Look at that. This is what I want people to understand. These people have, she has no idea what the hell the names of those provinces are, but she wants to send our sons and daughters and our troops and our military equipment to go fight it. So reject this myth that they've been selling you, that somebody had a cup of coffee stint at the UN and then makes $8 million after, has real foreign policy experience. It takes an outsider to see this through. Look at the blank expression. She doesn't know the names of the provinces that she wants to actually fight for. And there's a puppet masters right there. The donors right there that are playing like the puppet masters.
Cup of coffee in the UN, yeah, just a cup of coffee. You don't know foreign policy, Nikki Haley. Not even the cream rises to the top, Nikki. Ooh, Vivek, yeah.
Yeah, Tripoli tweeted out fatality.
Fatality.
I added that to it.
People to understand. These people have, she has no idea what the hell the names of those provinces are, but she wants to send our sons and daughters and our troops and our military equipment to go fight it. So reject this myth that they've been selling you, that somebody had a cup of coffee stint at the UN and then makes $8 million after, has real foreign policy experience. It takes an outsider to see this through. Look at the blank expression. She doesn't know the names of the provinces.
Fatality.
I was surprised that, I was the only one that made that.
Hi, Gomez.
Not other people would. Anyways, her fucking math sucks. Or I don't know where she's getting this crap, but
this is my favorite thing about today. This bit coming up. This is my favorite thing about today so far. By the way, I also had no idea it was gonna go psycho on the Macho Man voice. That was kind of fun.
This is good.
Really do need to ban TikTok once and for all. And let me tell you why. For every 30 minutes that someone watches TikTok, every day, they become 17% more anti-Semitic, more based on doing that. We now know that 50% of adults 18 to 25 think that Hamas was warranted in what they did with Israel. That's a problem. We really...
Oh, I thought I had my thing on there. Because that thing works for everything that I posted. But I didn't.
It really does.
It fucking really does. Like, how the fuck did I do that?
Really do need to ban TikTok.
Rambling, incoherent response.
Let's
think
do
that
that
Hamas
again.
was warranted in what they did with Israel. That's a problem.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
That that right there works on a lot of things.
So many things.
I've
such
found.
a great moment. So this got me thinking. It got me thinking about Nikki Haley math and how, in this era of declining educational standards and the weird Common Core shit and the math that we've had to come up with to explain things, our own unique systems of measurement and whatnot, A. Shapiro, for example. But so with Nikki Haley, you've got, and I did the actual math on this so that we could make it. So I got some notes here. Okay, so Nikki Haley just said that you get 17% more anti-Semitic for every 30 minutes you spend on TikTok, right? Which means that, and let's say you start out at 0. Let's say you found out that you could become a Hamas-loving terrorist sympathizer solely by watching TikTok. So if you spent spent 30 minutes a day
in the United States,
God damn it,
getting 17% more anti-Semitic per 30 minutes.
That's a start.
You would get you would hit full anti-Semitism after about 176 hours, right?
Which everybody hits that pretty quickly.
The average American spends 46 minutes a day on TikTok. Okay, so they're getting a little bit more than 17% anti-Semitism, right? But it's actually just a factor of 3. So it's a factor of 3. So you get that, it works out to about every 3.8 days, someone becomes 100%
super
anti-Semitic, and that's not hours, that's minutes. 176.5 minutes of TikTok gets
little
you
over
to,
an hour and a half.
Gets you to 100% anti-Semitism. Okay,
That's
just shy of 3 hours, a little bit over 3 hours in
My
some
kid
cases. At 46 minutes, just under 4 hours.
My kid doesn't even know what the Holocaust is.
Yeah.
She turned that way. She knew what it was, but then TikTok ruined her.
So by Nikki Haley's math, every single American that has spent more than like a total of 4 days on TikTok is 100% anti-Semitic. And you can prove that her math is accurate by the way that the streets all over the United States are running red with the blood of the Jews, right? This is something that's reported everywhere, just mass massacres of people of the Jewish faith all over the United States, unless 100% anti-Semitism is like level 1 anti-Semitism, that kindergarten, preschool anti-Semitism. And in order to escalate, you need to be like, let's say 6 million% anti-Semitic. And the only way that you can get that is to keep watching the TikTok, unless something like 3 TikToks equals, 0.5 bit shoots. Or like 10 TikToks to 1 bit shoot, maybe.
It's possible, yeah.
Maybe. Or 100 TikToks equals 5 minutes in the comment section of a No More News show. By the way, Adam will be on in a couple of weeks. I see. We need to maybe if we could get a comment from Nikki Haley or Nikki Haley's campaign, just to see how this math works out. Because I think that perhaps 100% anti-Semitism is like the low end of the anti-Semitic pool, and that you don't get into the deep end until you're significantly and impossibly more anti-Semitic than just a mere 100%. Nikki Haley has got to be the dumbest fucking broad on the political stage at the moment. And I understand that AOC is still milling about somewhere. Marjorie Taylor Greene's still milling about somewhere. Tulsi Gabbard opens her mouth every once in a while, too.
Isn't 17 a Q? No, 17's Q, right?
The 17th letter?
Yeah.
I believe you're right.
Yeah. 17's a big deal for the Q shamans.
It sure is Q.
And like, just where did she get this? Where did she get this number? She just made that up.
I would love to know. I would love to know where that number comes from.
Man,
she really did. I mean, Nikki Haley math, you've got to be confident to deliver it. You do. And she did. She had a very serious look on her face. Just 3.8 days of TikTok will make you 100% anti-Semitic. I don't have TikTok. I don't know. I don't know how the math works there. I really don't. I managed to become anti-Semitic by listening to the heads of state of Israel and Zionists, but I'm not anti-Semitic. I like Semites just fine. People call them Arabs or something like that.
They do.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I know.
Although, according to Congress, anti-Zionism is the exact same thing because, again, there's idiots like Nikki Haley in Congress.
Yeah.
I do like how Vivek called her and Joe Biden the two neocon holdouts for the Ukraine experiment. Vivek got cornered by good old Brian Kilmeade of the Fox News after the debate. And this exchange, fairly interesting, because Brian Kilmeade is a death cult war porn enthusiast, to say the least. He's a little bit unhinged might not be the right word. A lusty slut for the blood of the Palestinians or Russians might be a better way to phrase it. Yeah, I think so. Lusty slut for Russian blood. Brian Kilmeade having a conversation with the Tom Haverford of American politics, Vivek Ramaswamy.
But the problem, I just like to know with his policy, it's just ridiculous on Russia and Ukraine. He says, tell Russia basically they can have Ukraine if they promise not to have an alliance with China. I mean, if there's, can we hear us now? Hey, Vivek. I can hear. Vivek, are you comfortable? Are you comfortable with Russia taking as much as Ukraine as they want?
Wait, he's wearing Joe Biden's jacket.
Really believe that Vladimir Putin will agree not to have an alliance with China?
I think we have to play hardball there and make a hard deal that requires any reneging on that deal to have major consequences.
Like what? Like sanctions, like we have right now?
Well, look, I think that we have to be able to have real consequences, maximum pressure campaign. We have sanctions. We don't have a maximum pressure campaign. And I can go into the details of that, and I have at the Nixon Library and elsewhere. But what I'm saying, Brian, is the clear principles are this war doesn't advance U.S. interests.
Yes, it does.
Russia-China alliance is the top threat that we face.
If you give up Eastern Europe, we'll be in a world war.
If I may ask you a question.
Right.
You asked the question, I want to make sure I answer it.
I'm just going to answer you. It is in our interest.
Detailed contours of a deal. I think it is not in our interest to strengthen the Russia-China alliance. And I think our policy right now is driving Russia further into China's arms.
It's going to be done anyway. You cannot keep Russia from China.
I think Russia is going. I think the answer is we are driving Russia into China's hands. There are kinks in the armor of that relationship. Look at Russia sending weapons to India and to Vietnam after other meetings they've had. This is our opportunity. Nixon did this in 1972. And Brian, respectfully, people like you said the same thing, that Nixon couldn't do it. Well, it takes an outsider who's skeptical of that establishment. That's going to be me.
I was 7 years old.
But we can both. You and I are both students of history.
No excuse, dude.
Are you comfortable giving up Eastern Europe? Because you know they're already taking Moldova, already making moves on the Baltic.
I gotta hold it up there for a little bit because I mean that's insane.
His jacket?
Well, his jacket is bitching.
Yeah, I guess Joe Biden doesn't have the
he doesn't have the copyright on that. Joe Biden
doesn't have the fucking Top Gun wool on the top of his bomber.
Yeah.
He's literally wearing Tom Cruise's fucking jacket.
But it's a jean jacket. It's the jean jacket.
Is it a jean jacket?
Looks like it. Maybe not.
Okay.
Maybe it's leather. Hard telling.
His fucking jacket sucks. From what I'm looking at, it kind of looks like one of those leather bomber jackets.
Oh no, it kind of does. It kind of does, but like totally European style and sort of knockoffy. Yeah,
like a Vivek Ram's Swami.
Because he's a knockoff Rishi Sunak. However,
he's got the Wish Top Gun jacket on.
I've modified my my characterization of Vivek here. I've decided that he's more this dude.
This is the hottest restaurant in LA. All the sushi is made from fish previously owned by celebrities.
Okay.
I'm surprised they don't have him on Saturday Night Live playing.
We have Paul Reiser's salmon and Peter Bogdanovich's saltwater eel. Enjoy.
Bogdano delish. Man, you got it bad. I know you're checking your phone every 5 minutes to see if Lucy will come with you to my wedding.
I'm sorry.
Hey, I understand, which is why I got you something.
Hey, you're not supposed to get me anything. This is your special day.
I didn't buy you anything. What I have for you is a piece of advice.
Oh, damn. I was secretly hoping you got me the shoes Jaden Smith wears in Hitch 2, son of a hitch.
My advice to you is, if you want to be with Lucy, you have to be upfront with her about it. Be a man and ask her out.
She works for me. She uprooted her whole life, moved to Pawnee for this job. I don't want to make it weird. And what if she says no? What if I'm the...
That's that dude. That's Vivek. That's who he's going for, I think, right now.
Yeah, I'm surprised they don't have him on Saturday Night Live doing the... Maybe this weekend they'll have a cold opening with him doing Vivek.
Right. Do you think the cast or the writers of SNL hate Nikki Haley more than they fear the possibility of a President Ramaswamy? You'd hope so. You'd hope so. Because nobody actually fears the presidency of Vivek Ramaswamy. That's just not... It's not going to happen.
The clips we've shown from the, the Republican debate, that's about it, right?
I think somebody told Chris Christie to eat a sandwich or something like that. I don't know. I'm not going to care enough to find out. I know that, like, on my own time. It's
there's that one clip of what's his face, Vivek, saying, 9/11 was an inside job. January 6th was an inside job.
I haven't seen that.
Oh, you haven't seen that part? Where is it? I mean, it's all over the place. Let's see here. The one, it's an inside job. This is an inside job. You're an inside job. They're an inside job.
The whole damn court's an inside job.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it.